Chapter 787. You don't have to sacrifice yourself like this. Jiang Pengji wanted to say, I don't have to, but thinking about Huijuan's feelings, she swallowed the word back into her stomach. She said, the situation is still under control. I know what I'm doing. You don't have to think too much. Huijuan's expression was slightly gloomy. Her brows were furrowed. Not only would men be reluctant to see her go, even women would feel pity for her. But Lang Jun. Other than that, I don't know what else I can do for you. After Jiang Pengji's rejection, Huijun seemed to be deflated and dispirited. She said softly, Lang Jun once said that you don't take care of useless people. I've been living like a princess all these years, and I don't even know how to take care of people. If I were in the casualty camp, even the most ordinary medical soldier would be more agile and capable than me. Thinking about it carefully, my skin and flesh seem so lowly, as if I can only sell myself for a living. At the end of her speech, Huijuan's voice even sounded a little choked and embarrassed. For Huijun, her past was a wound so deep that her bones could be seen. Her skin and flesh had already rotted and had maggots. Even if she used the best rouge and face powder to cover it up, the stench and pain still followed her like a shadow. She could deceive the eyes of others, but she couldn't deceive herself. Silly girl. Jiang Pengji sighed slightly. Even if you're just an idle person, I see you as my sister. Even if you don't do anything and just act as a rich and idle person, I can still afford to take care of you. So what if it's your past? With me around, who dares to say a word about it? A person couldn't be bound by the past. She admired and felt sorry for Huijun. Naturally, she hoped that she could focus on the future. Jiang Pengji thought that Huijun was getting into a dead end because of her identity, so she said, if someone makes irresponsible remarks, let that person come to me. When we return to Wanzhou, I'll get someone to arrange a new identity for you. At that time, you can set up your own household and be your own master. Huijun, who was originally sad, suddenly burst into laughter. She was amused by Jiang Pengji's words, but the latter didn't know what had happened. Although they were both women, Jiang Pengji's brain was fundamentally different from that of a normal person. Naturally, she wasn't as meticulous as Huijun. She could understand why Huijun was sad, but she couldn't understand why Huijun would suddenly laugh. The clouds dispersed and the rain stopped. A woman's heart is like a needle at the bottom of the ocean. Jiang Pengji suddenly remembered what the audience in the streaming room had said. She thought about it and felt that something was wrong. He felt that he had excluded himself from the category of women. Lang Jun, I don't have any other intentions. I just want to do my best for you. At this point, Huijun bit her full lower lip and said hesitantly, I'm not very knowledgeable, but I do know that the logistics are lacking now. Continuing to delay will only bring harm to Lang Jun. The general in charge of the Jiamen Gate Pass is a lustful man. Lang Jun only needs to let me show myself in front of him. Even if I can't seduce him, I can at least make his soldiers suspicious of me. Once the army is not united, their combat power will be affected. This is very beneficial to us. Jiang Pengji frowned. She still didn't approve of it. It's too dangerous. There's no need. Lang Jun. Huijun plucked up her courage and grabbed Ji Yunshu's sleeve. Her tone carried the coquettish tone of a woman. Please allow this concubine. Jiang Pengji was indifferent. Her eyelids drooped. Her words left no room for negotiation. No means no. Huijun was a little discouraged, but she knew that Jiang Pengji was cold on the outside and soft-hearted on the inside. She might agree to this kind of thing if she was tortured a little more. Why not? After all, she had volunteered. Jiang Pengji said, even though Captain Meng said that Fu Wang is a good man, a general on the battlefield and a man in daily life are two completely different concepts. The latter will show mercy out of kindness, but the former will only consider the overall situation. It's not an exaggeration to say that he is heartless. Even if you are his wife or concubine, he will not be soft-hearted when he needs to sacrifice you, let alone a woman sent by the enemy. You have read a lot of unofficial history of the previous dynasty. The ancestor of the Mengs, Meng Jing, was known as the White Dragon among men. In order to boost the morale of the defeated soldiers, he personally killed his concubines and used their flesh to cook food. Isn't this heartless enough? He is the god of war that history praises. Huijuan's face turned pale. She knew what Jiang Pengji was worried about. As expected, If Fu Wang is a little more ruthless and kills you personally in order to stabilize the morale of the army and gain the trust of others, what will happen then? Beauty is indeed a weapon, but I hope that it can protect you and not become a double-edged sword that hurts you. You don't have to say anything more about this. I won't agree to it. Hui Jun had no choice but to run into a wall with Jiang Pengji. The next day, she was about to go to the barracks when she coincidentally ran into Feng Zhen, who was feeling uneasy because of his alcohol addiction. Based on Feng Zhen's years of experience with women, he had long discovered that Hui Jun's appearance was fake. Under her plain and unadorned appearance, she must be a peerless beauty. However, she stayed by his lord's side. Feng Zhen could only admire her from afar and guess at her true appearance. He didn't dare to flirt with her. "What's wrong with you, Lady Hui?" Feng Zhen saw that she had a troubled look on her face and couldn't help but ask. Who would dare to bully someone under his lord's protection? Hui Jun was immersed in her own thoughts when she heard someone call her. Her heart skipped a beat and she suddenly woke up. "Good morning, Mr. Feng." She was still dressed like an ordinary soldier. Seeing Feng Zhen walk 2 steps closer, Hui Jun's expression became more flustered. Feng Zhen frowned. He became more cautious and suspicious. Staying in this barracks, with the lord's protection, who could make Hui Jun show an expression of unease? "Did Lady Hui run into some trouble?" Feng Zhen asked. Hui Jun thought about it and looked around. Her eyes signaled for Feng Zhen to step aside and talk. She told him about her worries, which made Feng Zhen look at her in surprise. "Mr. Feng." Feng Zhen came back to his senses and said, "Lady Hui's worries are not without reason. Using beauty to sow discord is indeed a solution." Jiamen Pass was abuzz with discussion. Everyone said that Fu Wang wanted to pledge allegiance to the Lord. If a peerless beauty appeared now, even if Fu Wang had a mouthful of mouths, he wouldn't be able to explain himself. However, Lady Hui, think carefully. If you do that, not only will you be at a disadvantage, but your life will also be in danger. In order to eliminate rumors, the best way was to kill the beauty who offered herself to him. From what Fu Wang had done in the past, he was quite ruthless. It was not impossible for him to destroy a beauty. Hui Jun gritted her teeth and said, "If I can share Lang Jun's worries, I am willing to do it. Please advise me on how to get Lang Jun to agree." Feng Zhen's expression became even more strange. He sighed and said, "Femme fatale." Hui Jun's expression froze. He hurriedly added, "I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about the Lord." Being able to make a good little girl sacrifice herself like this was more terrifying than femme fatale. "Lady Hui, come forward and talk. You only need to say this to the Lord." Chapter 788. Although Feng Zhen's style of doing things was unreliable, his brain was still reliable. Hui Jun did as he was told. Jiang Pengji sighed and agreed. One day, the messenger from outside Jiamen Pass arrived. Fu Wang was about to ignore him when Fu Wang's mood plummeted as he looked at Meng Hun's bearded face. However, the messenger today was different. It wasn't Meng Hun. Fu Wang heard the messenger's report. Before he could say anything, the deputy general next to him mocked. "I heard that Lu Shi created a women's camp. Marching and fighting are obviously men's work. Why would he bring women to the battlefield? In my opinion, the so-called women's camp is full of tricks. They say they are soldiers who can fight, but who knows what kind of people they are. Now he even sent women as messengers." As soon as the deputy general spoke, the others all showed expressions of agreement. Women should not go to the battlefield. Women on the battlefield were not decent women. Since ancient times, there had been no women in military camps. The women referred to the wives and concubines of the soldiers. Who would bring their wives to war? As for prostitutes, they were not considered women in the eyes of the soldiers. They were just female animals. Fu Wang frowned. He had a rough idea of the identity of the messenger. "Messenger, please wait in the side hall. I will go there now." Hui Jun was wearing a thick bamboo hat that covered her face that could bring disaster to a country and cause suffering to the people. Fu Wang saw the woman's figure and confirmed her identity. She was indeed the woman from the other day. "How should I address you?" Fu Wang asked hypocritically. "Her Majesty the Empress?" Hui Jun lifted the thick white curtain. She sat upright on the right side and bowed to Fu Wang. "General, that's interesting. His Majesty is still very young. He is not even 20 years old. He is not married yet. How can there be an empress? Fu Wang's dark eyes stared straight at Hui Jun, and he saw that there was a trace of astonishment in her eyes. He had guessed Hui Jun's identity, but she did not know that the general was Fu Wang, the commander of Jiamen Pass. After a moment of shock, she felt some hatred in her heart. Her beautiful eyes glanced at Fu Wang's hands, and she calmed herself down. That day, it was this person who had almost killed Lang Jun with an arrow in the back. Although only her arm was injured in the end, Hui Jun applied medicine on Jiang Pengji's arm for 3 days. She kept this in mind. Fu Wang corrected himself. The late empress? That Lu Shi sure is daring to hide you. As the saying goes, the death of a man is like the extinguishing of a lamp. No matter how absurd the emperor was when he was still alive, or how many wrongs he had committed, he was already dead. How could he be held accountable? Under the manipulation of the royal family, the previous emperor was still in the wrong, but his mistake was because of the beauty of the enchantress. It was an objective mistake, but a subjective mistake. Part of the blame was pushed to Hui Jun, calling her a demoness who brought disaster to the country. However, Hui Jun could not acknowledge this identity. She only smiled modestly. Rumor has it that the late empress was a beauty of her generation. How can a firefly's light compete with the moon's brilliance? General's words, I will take it as a compliment. Fu Wang did not have any concrete evidence in his hands, so there was no point in continuing to dwell on this issue. He said, Lu Shirong, how should I address this lady? My humble name is Hui Jun. Fu Wang said, what is Lu Shi's purpose in asking Lady Hui to come here? Hui Jun said calmly, I heard rumors in Jiamen Pass that you have the intention to pledge allegiance to my lord? Fu Wang's eyebrows twitched, but his expression did not change. He said, Lady Hui must be joking. I am loyal to my lord. Why would I betray him so easily? Considering that Lady Hui is a woman, I will pretend that I did not hear what you said just now. Although he said that, his eyes were glued to Hui Jun, as if he was attracted by her appearance. However, Hui Jun was used to seeing all kinds of looks. Fu Wang's acting skills could not fool her. General, I am relieved to hear that. Hui Jun smiled sweetly, and her beautiful eyes seemed to be shining. My lord was also shocked when he first heard this news. My lord also said that she admires you as an upright man. You have pledged allegiance to the Mengs, which is really casting pearls before swine. If it were not for the fact that we are in the middle of a war, I might be able to become your confidant. It's better for General to clarify this kind of rumor as soon as possible, lest the soldiers under your command become uneasy and hurt General's prestige. Fu Wang's smile was a little forced. Not to mention that he did not have the intention to kill. Even if he did, he could not kill Hui Jun after she said that last sentence. If he killed her, it would be even more obvious. Thank you for your concern, Lady Hui. Fu Wang asked again, other than that, is there anything else, Magistrate Lu? Lu Shi and Jiang Pengji were both magistrates, but the one who came forward was the latter. Lu Shi was still hiding behind the scenes, so his presence was weak. This, Magistrate Lu, was naturally referring to Jiang Pengji. Hui Jun frowned, like a frowning shizi when she held her heart. My lord does not have any other instructions, but I do have one thing. I wonder if the general, Fu Wang said. Just say it, Lady Hui. Ever since that day, I have been longing for the general. Now that I have met you, it is even more. Hui Jun's cheeks were slightly flushed, and her eyes were moist. She said shyly and timidly, it is just that I know my limits, and I dare not tarnish the general's illustrious reputation with my dirty body. Fu Wang's heart beat even faster, and he could not control his eyelids. Being confessed to by such a beauty, even Fu Wang's heart swayed a little, but he quickly steadied his mind. Lust was like a knife above the head. Although the flower in front of him was the most beautiful in the world, it was not only thorny, but also poisonous. He could not touch it. Lady Hui, are you recommending yourself to sleep with me? Fu Wang's heart skipped a beat. He knew that it was impossible, but his eyes did not let go of the opportunity to admire her. Hui Jun raised her sleeve to cover her lips and smiled. How could that be? Could it be that in the general's eyes, a woman expressing her feelings is recommending herself to sleep with you? It is just an ordinary love, and it is not necessary to obtain it. Looking at the general's handsome appearance, have you ever received the love of a woman before? In other words, She was all about flirting and not marrying. She was only responsible for fanning the flames and extinguishing the flames as she saw fit. Fu Wang felt a little awkward. In layman's terms, how could he not feel awkward when someone was talking about feelings and his mind went blank for a moment? Huijuan's appearance was beyond Fu Wang's expectations, but she only came to take a look and then left. Although she had left, she left behind the legend of a peerless beauty. Fu Wang's confidant saw this and asked worriedly, "General, do we need to stop the rumors?" "Not for now. Isn't this what Lu Shi wants to see?" Fu Wang closed his eyes and said, "How are the preparations for the chess piece?" "We received news not long ago that the preparations are almost complete. Lu Shi has not noticed anything. After all, in the eyes of ordinary people, this chess piece was indeed buried very deeply. Who would have thought that the confidant of the late Wulong County chief was their spy?" For the next 2 days, Huijun took over Meng Hun's harassment work. Every day, she would come to Jiamen Pass for 2 hours before leaving. As the saying goes, 3 people make a tiger. Not only did the Meng family's spy completely suspect Fu Wang, even his confidant could not sit still. "General, what are you?" Chapter 789. Fu Wang raised his eyebrows in the face of his confidant's doubts. He looked majestic, as if he was looking down on all living things. "What's wrong?" The confidant wanted to ask his general if he had really fallen in love with a woman. But when his eyes met with Fu Wang's, he couldn't ask any more questions. Although it was said that the general liked beauties, he knew that Fu Wang wasn't a real lecher. So the confidant swallowed the words he was about to say and changed his words. "General, if you don't do anything, Jiamen Pass is going to be in chaos." Fu Wang's confidant furrowed his thick black eyebrows. He looked fierce and worried. "You know, Meng Zhan is a suspicious old fox. He has never trusted you for years. He has planted a lot of spies around you. If you do anything, those spies will definitely do something bad to you." Fu Wang waved his hand and said carelessly, "I know about it. Those despicable people have been jealous of me for a long time. It's funny that those idiots are so useless. They have no talent except for jealousy. Meng Zhan would rather put me in an important position than give them a high position. If there were talented people under his command, Meng Zhan wouldn't have tolerated Fu Wang's bad temper. Fu Wang knew that, which was why he dared to do this. He knew that as long as he didn't betray the Mengs, no matter what he did, the Mengs would tolerate it. Every time he thought of Meng Zhan's sullen face, he felt extremely happy. That day, Huijun came to visit as usual. Along the way, the intense hostility in her surroundings made her heart tighten. These gazes were mixed with undisguised covetousness and possessiveness. She was still smiling when she saw Fu Wang, as if she wasn't disturbed. "General, I have something to say, but I don't know if I should say it." Fu Wang said calmly, "Lady Huijun, just say it. In the next few days, you should be careful of the despicable people." Huijun looked at Fu Wang with her beautiful eyes. She said in a joking tone, "I don't want you to be suspicious, so I don't dare to say more. But in history, many famous generals were destroyed by despicable people. It's a pity. I'm watching coldly. General's vice-general seems to be disloyal. I'm afraid he will hurt you." This was a blatant provocation, but it was also the truth. Fu Wang's eyes moved and he said calmly, "Thank you for your concern, Lady Hui. I appreciate it." He had the intention to let outsiders see the internal discord and use it to confuse Jiang Pengji so that she would let down her guard. It was just that Fu Wang did not expect the old man to be so cunning. His arrangements were all within Jiang Pengji's expectations. The atmosphere in Jiamen Pass was getting more and more intense. It seemed that Fu Wang was really going to follow the beauty and surrender to the enemy. Jiang Pengji heard the spy's report. Fu Wang was preparing to strike at midnight the next day. Everyone in the tent rubbed their fists, eager to get into action. They couldn't wait to rush to Jiamen Pass. In the past half a month, they could only watch the Jiamen Pass unwillingly. Every day, they could only vent their excess energy by training. Now he could finally go all out. Among the generals, Dian Yan was the calmest. Li Yun, the little angel, and Meng Hun couldn't contain their joy. In order to quickly accumulate military merits, the former was eager to fight every day. Without military merits, how could he marry the sweetheart of a noble family? Meng Hun, on the other hand, had been suppressing his anger for the past few days because he could finally demand payment from the Mengs. They looked at Jiang Pengji, waiting for their lord to assign them their tasks. This Fu Wang is really patient. He waited for almost half a month before making his move. Feng Zhan calculated the time in his mind and sneered. Tomorrow is the new moon, the darkest day of the month. Fu Wang has been thinking about this for a long time. If they hadn't seen through Fu Wang's plan so quickly, they might have really let down their guard after half a month. Furthermore, Fu Wang had spies in Wulong County. If they worked together, they might really end up like the chief of Wulong. No matter how carefully he thought about it, once his plan is seen through, all his arrangements will be for naught. If the night attack was seen through, even a real god of war would be at a disadvantage, let alone Fu Wang. Jiang Pengji lowered her eyes and said, "Don't be careless. We have to be cautious." Even if victory was in their grasp, they couldn't be arrogant, not to mention that they had only foreseen their opponent's plans. The final outcome hadn't been decided yet. An arrogant army would be defeated. She always remembered these 4 words. Li Yun suddenly thought of something and asked Jiang Pengji, "My lord, if we make our move tomorrow night, then Lady Hui." In fact, Jiang Pengji didn't want Hui Jun to go to Jiamen Pass tomorrow. It was too risky. Now that they were at the end of the tunnel, Fu Wang might go all out and detain Hui Jun. If that happened, Jiang Pengji wouldn't be able to help. But Hui Jun had been there for several days. If she didn't go tomorrow, it was hard to guarantee that Fu Wang wouldn't be suspicious. Once he became suspicious, it would alert the enemy and all their previous efforts would be in vain. Hui Jun was sensible and took the initiative to say to Jiang Pengji, "Of course we will do it tomorrow, or Fu Wang will definitely be suspicious." Jiang Pengji pursed her lips and furrowed her handsome brows. "I have an idea." She glanced at everyone in the tent. Seeing her eyes, Yang Si and Feng Zhan instinctively had a bad feeling. "Tomorrow, I will disguise myself as an ordinary guard and sneak into Jiamen Pass with Hui Jun. I will support you from the inside." Feng Zhan suppressed his impulsive thoughts. Why did his lord always like to take risks? She went wherever there was danger? But my lord, if she had to take the risk, Feng Zhan would rather choose someone else. Jiang Pengji said, "Don't worry, Zisher. I dare to do this because I have confidence. Everything is more important than the big picture." Facing Jiang Pengji, Feng Zhan knew that he had no choice but to compromise. At this moment, he missed the people in Wanzhou. If they were there, they might be able to stop his lord from courting death. Yang Si said, "My lord has made up her mind, so we can't stop her. If things go south, my lord, you should prioritize your own safety. Tomorrow night, Fu Wang will definitely sneak out of the pass with his elite troops. This is also when the defense at Jiamen Pass is at its weakest. We can split up our forces and send one group to wait for Fu Wang and his men to walk into the trap. The other group will take advantage of the night to sneak around and break through the pass. If my lord can make trouble in Jiamen Pass and make them panic, it will be easy to break through the pass." By the time Fu Wang returned, they would have already broken through Jiamen Pass and escaped without a trace. Her strategists had already taken a step back, so Jiang Pengji couldn't challenge their bottom line. Otherwise they would be furious. Chapter 790. On the first day of the new moon, dark clouds covered the sky. There was no moonlight at all. Whether it was Jiang Pengji's camp or Jiamen Pass, both sides were filled with tension. The smell of gunpowder was strong. Fu Wang's expression suddenly changed when he heard the news of Huijuan's arrival. The 2 deputies looked at each other. They had almost forgotten about this woman. One of the deputies said, "General, if that woman sees the movements in the pass, once Lu Shi is on guard." Another added, "Yes, for the sake of the bigger picture, we can't let her go." Fu Wang wanted to chase Hui Jun out so that she wouldn't see something she shouldn't see. Not only would it ruin his plan, but it would also bring her death. However, the deputy general had already spoken. Fu Wang couldn't show his selfishness. He said, "I know what I'm doing." Hui Jun was brought to the side hall. Even though her face under the heavy curtains was cold, she still calmed herself down. "General, it's only been a day. Why do you look so pale?" Hui Jun smiled naturally, as if she didn't notice the unusual atmosphere in Jiamen Pass. She took small steps forward and was only a few feet away from Fu Wang. He could even smell her body fragrance. Fu Wang looked at Hui Jun seriously. His dark eyes were filled with undisguised strong emotions. My soldiers are disobedient. It's a little tiring. I'm not feeling well today. I've made a fool of myself in front of you. Hui Jun's heart tightened when she heard how Fu Wang addressed her. She didn't know if he did it intentionally or unintentionally. I've told you before that some of your subordinates have ulterior motives. Could it be that they are the ones causing trouble and bringing trouble to the general? Hui Jun listened attentively. She wasn't an innocent girl. Fu Wang's gaze at her today was very strange. Her heart skipped a beat, and the look in her eyes changed. She looked at Fu Wang with deep concern. Fu Wang leaned slightly and asked her, "Are you worried about me, Lady Hui?" "I've said before that I've admired you for a long time." Hui Jun nodded shyly. She wasn't overly innocent, but she didn't seem to be fawning either. It tickled Fu Wang's heart. She was trying to seduce him. "Xian Mu?" Fu Wang took the opportunity to catch Hui Jun's outstretched hand. It felt warm and smooth to the touch. There was an indescribable feeling, as if a feather had touched the softest part of his heart. "Please speak frankly, Lady Hui. I am but a boorish person. It is inevitable that I will misunderstand." Hui Jun secretly wanted to withdraw her hand, but the other party's palm was like an iron hoop. She couldn't move at all. The general is mighty and extraordinary. As long as it's a woman, which woman wouldn't like him? Do you really want me to say it out loud? Towards the end, her tone had a sweet and numbing tone, which shocked Fu Wang so much that he almost couldn't hold her hand. Even though he knew that Hui Jun was lying, Fu Wang was still very happy. Apart from Zhang Pengji and the system, no one else knew that Hui Jun was capable of seduction. The so-called charm art was not just mind control in the ordinary sense. It was a very high-level mind interference that ordinary people would not be able to resist. Even Hui Jun herself didn't know much about it. She only knew that others were easily influenced by her, but she didn't know the specifics. Fu Wang laughed bitterly, and his mind became clearer. He said, "Everyone says that the home of a gentle woman is the grave of a hero. I used to scoff at it, but now I understand that I'm too inexperienced. If the home of a gentle woman is Huinyangzi, few men in the world can resist it." Hui Jun asked with a smile. Her delicate body softened and she leaned against his chest. She asked meaningfully, "To me, this is probably the most touching words of love. I wonder if the general is in the majority of men's group, or the few men group." The tip of his nose sniffed the fragrant body fragrance. It was sweet but not greasy, and it stirred up his feelings. He secretly glanced at the sky outside, smiled, and carried her horizontally, causing her to cry out in surprise. In front of Huinyangzi, Fu Zhengtu is just an ordinary man. Fu Wang, whose courtesy name was Zhengtu, was given to him by Fu Yang when he was still alive. Apart from a few confidants, few people knew about it. On the other side, the guards who followed Hui Jun into the pass were all settled in a remote place. There was a stable nearby, and the smell was very strong. Zhang Pengji was disguised as an ordinary guard. Along the way, she smelled a different kind of tension. "My lord, what do we do now?" Li Yun lowered his head and asked Zhang Pengji in a low voice. Yes, Li Yun had also snuck in. Now he had a heavy responsibility. Not only did he have to think of a way to cause trouble in Jiamen Pass, but he also had to protect Zhang Pengji. Sigh, if his lord was hurt. He could imagine the sinister smiles of the men in his mind. Looking at the situation, they want to detain us so that we can't leak any information to the outside world. That's just what we want. If Fu Wang didn't intend to detain them, Zhang Pengji would have to worry about how to justifiably stay in Jiamen Pass. The night was deep, and there was not a trace of moonlight in the sky. It was pitch black as far as the eye could see, as if a ferocious beast was hibernating in the depths. I'm only worried about Hui Jun now. Fu Wang is still trustworthy. He thinks that he has victory in his grasp, so he won't kill Hui Jun to raise the morale of the troops. But it's hard to guarantee that the people around him won't think they're smart. Zhang Pengji frowned. She couldn't rule out that possibility. Li Yun comforted her. Lady Hui is smart. She'll definitely be safe and sound. Zhang Pengji smiled. She's really smart. In the void, there was the sun in her heart. Because of this, Zhang Pengji cared for her and took care of her. But Jiang Pengji didn't expect that a woman's mind was really hard to guess. Even she didn't expect that Hui Jun would quietly do something so big. She gave him a taste of his own medicine and ruthlessly tricked Fu Wang. She really didn't know whether Fu Wang was a man or a wolf. How could the love between a man and a woman be like that? He almost swallowed her whole. When she took a breath and her mind gradually became clear, Hui Jun took a deep breath, and her eyes were sharp. The seat next to her was already cold, and Fu Wang was nowhere to be seen. Hui Jun raised her hand to touch her aching neck, collarbone, and full lips. She spat softly. Her voice was hoarse. "Serves you right." She added a lot of purified sleeping grass powder to the makeup on her skin and lips. Most of it went into Fu Wang's stomach. He was a man, so how could he taste all kinds of makeup? It wasn't wrong for him to let down his guard against women, especially beautiful women. If Fu Wang dared to do this, he shouldn't blame her for retaliating. Since he planned to use sleeping grass to trick the Lord, he shouldn't blame her for returning the favor. She moved her body slightly and felt a throbbing pain in her private parts. Hui Jun couldn't help but think. Chapter 791. General, everything is ready. Let's go. Fu Wang's trusted deputy came over in full armor. He cupped his fists and reported the situation to Fu Wang. In the dim light, Fu Wang could vaguely see the joy on Fu Wang's face. "General, we will definitely capture Lu Shi alive this time and use the truth to shut the mouths of those despicable people. I'm sure they won't dare to suspect you again." Fu Wang was a little lost in thought. Hearing the deputy's relieved tone, he laughed and said, "So what if they doubt me?" He hated to be schemed by scoundrels. Those people had no other ability but jealousy. But it didn't mean that he was loyal to the Mengs. In fact, except for Fu Yang, his former lord and adoptive father, Fu Wang had never regarded the Mengs as a serious superior. Those scoundrels suspected that he was not loyal to the Mengs. However, disloyalty didn't mean betrayal. The Mengs offered was quite generous, and Fu Wang had no intention of jumping ship. His trusted lieutenant smiled and echoed, "Indeed, it's nothing but a fly bothers people." For Fu Wang and his trusted subordinates, the Mengs' planted informants were annoying flies. Fu Wang looked up at the sky with a rather soft expression. He said, "At midnight the army will set off." There was still some time before the time to take action. The trusted deputy had nothing to do, so he asked curiously, "General, what good things have happened to you recently? Why are you so happy?" A few days ago, he was still gloomy, but today he seemed to have swept away the haze and looked quite happy. In normal times, Fu Wang would definitely avoid answering. Probably because he grew up in a wolf pack, Fu Wang had a strong desire to possess the people and things he liked. If the situation allowed it, he even had the urge to hide them so tightly that the wind and rain from the outside world would not be able to touch them. Even when he really entered the normal society, this bad habit hadn't been completely corrected. In recent years, the situation was much better. At least there wouldn't be such an embarrassing thing as a general always digging a hole to hide treasures under the mattress. He has his eyes on a woman. The trusted assistant general gave a dullo sound. He swept his eyes over his general with a strange expression. It was clear that he didn't have high hopes for this outcome. The general was interested in the wife, but the wife might not be interested in his own general. Fu Wang's expression darkened as he asked, "What's with your expression? Have you forgotten about the ladies of the fragrant house, General?" The assistant general asked gently. Fu Wang was a single adult with no concubines or children. Though he was highly valued by the Mengs now, in an ancient society where bloodlines and origins were highly valued, no matter how a brat like Fu Wang could climb up and become a legend, he would still be looked down upon. Not to mention the noble ladies. Even those poor and destitute women looked down on him. Fu Yang naturally did not want to see Fu Wang suffer, so the marriage was delayed until Fu Ju passed away from illness. Without a family to arrange for him, Fu Wang was alone. It was just that he also had the needs of a normal man. Logically speaking, such a golden bachelor should be the most sought-after object in the brothel. But the truth was, ever since the young and ignorant Fu Wang had been lured to a few brothels by Fu Jing's old subordinates, he had been despised. Using the words of the few flower maidens who maintained a dewy relationship with Fu Wang for a short period of time, serving such a man was like suffering. After learning of this matter, There was a period of time when Fu Wang's comrades looked at him strangely. Men, no matter how old or young, always cared about certain things. Even Fu Yong once made dirty jokes about Fu Wang, saying that he was indeed born brave. He was so yellow that he could not bear to look at him. He's a decent man. In other words, he wanted to turn over a new leaf, and did not want to talk about his dark history. The trusted deputy was quite surprised. His general's reaction was not right. It was as if he wanted to take him back to warm the Kong bed. Which family is she from? Jiamen Pass was a remote and desolate place. What kind of beautiful woman could be bred from such a barren land? Could it be that his general did not like delicacies and preferred plain porridge and side dishes? You talk too much, Fu Wang said in a faint voice of disdain. The trusted deputy felt as if an arrow had pierced his heart. At this time, Fu Wang said with the horsewhip in his hand, "Just wait until you win against Lu Shi." The trusted deputy was so shocked that he almost fell off his horse. It couldn't be. Could it be that his general had fallen for Lu Shi? What a high standard. His taste was also quite strange. It was said that Lu Shi had disguised herself as a man for 18 years, but no one had seen through her disguise. It was obvious that she was a boorish man. The image of a bearded man whining shyly and pounding on his chest suddenly appeared in his mind. He could not accept it. Time passed quickly in the solemn atmosphere. Fu Wang never fought a battle without preparation. He had thoroughly studied the terrain around Jiamen Pass. Even if it was dark at night, his army would not be disturbed. To be safe, he even wrapped the horses' hooves with cloth and tied their mouths to reduce the sound of hooves and snorts. In his eyes, he was not only a man, but also a wolf. No matter day or night, it was his home field. After some effort, Fu Wang had already led nearly 10,000 soldiers to Zhang Pengji's camp. Torches burned in the distance, and he could vaguely see people walking around. The camp was quiet as usual. But for some reason, Fu Wang's heart skipped a beat. He felt that something was wrong. However, the arrow had been knocked on the bow and had to be released. He had been planning for so many days, and he could not let it go to waste. The trusted deputy was the first to notice his abnormality. "General, what's wrong?" the deputy asked in a low voice. Fu Wang shook his head and said, "I don't know why, but I feel that something is wrong." The trusted deputy frowned and said, "Could it be that scoundrel is causing trouble for you again?" Fu Wang had left most of his elites and trusted subordinates at Jiamen Pass, and the soldiers he had brought with him were all close to the Mengs. He had no choice but to bring them with him for the sneak attack. The last time Fu Wang attacked Wulong County, he had brought Fu Wang's old subordinates, who were also his trusted subordinates. They had made a great contribution. The soldiers close to the Mengs were dissatisfied. They thought that Fu Wang was favoring them and discriminating against them because of the unfair distribution of military merits. It was no wonder that Fu Wang was unhappy because they were not his elites. No, they don't dare to be so bold. If they neglect their duty because of personal feelings, I will cut them down. The trusted deputy glanced behind him and said in a low voice, "Then why?" Fu Wang said, "I can't say. I just feel a little tired." As time went by, he even felt that his weapon, which usually did not weigh much, had become much heavier. It was not a good sign. If he was talking to an outsider, he would definitely not say that his condition and mentality were not good. But he did not have to hide it from his trusted subordinate. After saying that, before the trusted deputy could speak, he was stunned. If it were not for the darkness of the night, others would have seen his face turn red. Before the battle, he had hugged a beauty and done all kinds of shameful things. Was that why he felt tired? This reason? It would be embarrassing to say it out loud. Chapter 792. More than 10,000 troops split into several groups and sneaked toward Zhang Pengji's camp. Fu Wang ordered his men to shoot whistling arrows. Once they heard the order, they would attack the camp. The so-called whistling arrows were also known as whistling arrows. The soldiers tied a small bamboo whistle to the arrow shaft. The arrow shaft flew into the sky and made a sharp sound. It could be said that if Zhang Pengji hadn't seen it in advance, Fu Wang's move would have caught people off guard. It was a pity that Zhang Pengji was destined to be a stumbling block on Fu Wang's road to success. Not only could this stumbling block cut the legendary Fu Wang in half, but it could also give him a deeper blow. After the order was given, several troops rushed into Zhang Pengji's camp from all directions. Fu Wang rode the horse. The more intense the exercise, the more he felt his energy depleted. At first, he met with weak resistance, but Fu Wang took the lead and opened a path to the main tent like a god of death. The uneasiness in his heart grew stronger. Something was wrong. Fu Wang's eyes suddenly widened. The uneasiness in his heart grew stronger. He had to leave as soon as possible. General, it's a trap. According to their plan, Jiang Pengji's troops should be exhausted and weak. They shouldn't be sleeping like dead pigs. However, when their army rushed into the camp, there were only a few soldiers who rushed out. It was like an empty camp. The trusted assistant general rushed into a few larger tents and found them empty. Instead, there were piles of hay and dead branches on the ground. They had fallen into a trap. After coming to a conclusion, the trusted assistant general hurriedly reported to Fu Wang. The trusted subordinates of the Mengs were only thinking about making a great contribution. Fu Wang was panicking, but his face was calm and composed. Even if they had fallen into a trap, if even the general panicked, wouldn't the soldiers under him be in a mess? Get into formation and cover the retreat. No matter what Lu Shi had up his sleeve, the best choice was to leave as soon as possible. However, Feng Zhen and the others wouldn't give him the chance. They had been lying in ambush in the distance, secretly observing the movements of the camp. The prey had fallen into the trap. How could they let it go? At that moment, Fu Wang heard the sound of several whistling arrows in the air. He didn't arrange the whistling arrows. It could only be Lu Shi's action. This was the signal to attack. A few breaths after the whistling arrow rang out, streaks of orange light streaked across the originally dark sky. From afar, it looked like a meteor shower. In the eyes of Fu Wang and the others, these meteor showers were flying towards them and were rapidly enlarging in front of them. The flaming arrow plunged into the military tent, and the fire raged. The tent was covered with flammable hay and withered branches, and the fire spread with the help of the wind. The horses were afraid of the sudden fire and raised their hooves in panic, trying to avoid it. If you want to leave now, you'll have to ask the axes in my hands first. Surprisingly, after the fire spread, Jiang Pengji's soldiers appeared in the empty tents one by one. Fu Wang's troops were in disarray. They were either burned by the fire or stabbed in the vitals and beheaded by the enemy who suddenly appeared. Fu Wang wanted to retreat, but he was blocked by a black-faced man with 2 axes who jumped out of nowhere. Noisy! Fu Wang sneered and charged forward. Dian Yan had long heard of Fu Wang's combat ability from Meng Hun. He had long been itching to fight him. He was hiding in the tunnel under the camp. Hearing that Fu Wang wanted to retreat, he quickly jumped out. For a military general, the enemy's head was the most beneficial spoil of war. His trusted assistant general organized the troops and wanted to support Fu Wang, but he never expected his general to be entangled. He secretly gritted his teeth and cursed, "This Lu Shi is really AF** King Lunatic." He had only heard of people setting fire to the enemy's camp, but he had never seen someone setting fire to their own camp. Fire didn't recognize people. Not only would it burn the enemy, it would also burn himself. Dian Yan was known for his strength. The weapons in his hands added up to more than 50 kilograms. How could an ordinary person swing them? Not only could he wield the axes tightly, but when the axes hit the ground would tremble 3 times. Hey! That's all. Officer Meng is exaggerating. Dian Yan mocked. He endured the sharp pain between his thumb and forefinger. He thought he was strong enough that few could fight against him except for the Lord. He didn't expect Fu Wang to be an expert. Not only did he have strength, but he was also as fast as Li Yun. This kind of all-rounder was annoying. How dare a mere junior be so arrogant? Fu Wang knew he was in a bad state. His physical strength was declining rapidly. Usually, he wouldn't sweat even if he practiced for 2 hours. Now, he felt weak in his limbs and dizzy in his head. He didn't know that the sleeping grass took effect slowly and the effect lasted for a long time. If he exercised vigorously, it would accelerate his blood flow. Hand over the head. Dian Yan didn't show any weakness. He had bragged to Meng Hun about chopping off Fu Wang's head. Now that the opportunity was so good, Fu Wang wasn't as powerful as Meng Hun said. He was more like a fake tiger who looked strong on the outside but was weak on the inside. If he still couldn't take down Fu Wang, his bragging would be ruined. Humph! Fu Wang had the cunning of a wild beast. He wouldn't force it even if he couldn't win. Now that he had fallen into Jiang Pengji's ambush, the losses were irrecoverable. He could only try his best to reduce them. He planned to lead his men to fight and retreat. There was nothing to be ashamed of even if they couldn't win. Only by protecting the lives of the soldiers could they have a chance to stage a comeback. It would be foolish to lose his troops because of a moment of anger. If they continued to delay, they might really be smothered to death by the flames. Seeing the burning camp, Feng Zhan, who was hiding in a high place, snorted. This Fu Wang is quite clear-headed. He retreated when he saw the situation. Yang Si, who was standing to the side, twirled his beard. He has the guts to make decisions and doesn't care about loyalty. It's a waste to leave him in the Mengs. Sure enough, it was better to capture him. It would be best if he surrendered voluntarily. If he didn't, they could torture him until he did. Forcing people to buy and sell was a common practice since ancient times. 2 flowers bloomed, one on each side. Dian Yan was getting more and more excited as he fought. Meng Han had already led his troops to the vicinity of Jiamen Pass, waiting for Jiang Pengji's signal to attack. As if by tacit agreement, Jiang Pengji chose to attack in the middle of the night. In ancient times, people had the habit of working at sunrise and resting at sunset. Therefore, by the 3rd watch period, ordinary people were already in a deep sleep. Jiang Pengji waited and waited. Finally, it was the 3rd watch period. The patrolling soldiers had changed shifts. She nudged Li Yun, who was resting. It's almost time. Li Yun received the order and gave the other guards a look. More than 100 of them perked up. There was going to be a tough battle ahead of them. Jiang Pengji took out her long knife and killed the guards outside. She jumped over the wall and left the yard. Li Yun hurried to catch up. Jiang Pengji and the others didn't know the layout of the buildings in Jiamen Pass, but she remembered the way back. As long as they retraced their steps, they would definitely reach the gate of Jiamen Pass. Chapter 793. On the other side, Meng Han led his troops to avoid the enemy and sneaked toward Jiamen Pass. They and Jiang Pengji had agreed to use the whistling arrow as the signal to attack and concentrate their forces to break through the pass. It was the new moon that night, so the sky was dark and it was easy to make mistakes. As Meng Han waited nervously for the news, a messenger hurried over and reported to him. Captain Meng, there's a whistling arrow in the direction of the camp. Meng Han was stunned for a moment and said, "This is definitely not our order. Go scout again and report back as soon as you find anything." The messenger retreated after receiving the order. Not long after, he returned to report. There's a fire in the direction of our camp. It looks like the enemy has rushed into the center of the camp. In the dark night, the horizon had already been dyed orange, like the last rays of the sunset. Meng Han got up in surprise and walked to the high ground to look in the direction of the camp. There was indeed a fire. The whistling arrow must have been fired by the enemy. With his good eyesight and the strong fire in the distance, Meng Han could vaguely see some black dots. Based on the intensity of the fire, Meng Han could guess how tragic it was over there. Fu Wang was bound to suffer heavy casualties this time, and the Meng family was bound to lose everything. Meng Han suppressed the joy in his heart, but he couldn't help but smile. The Mengs had suffered a double loss. Losing more than 10,000 soldiers was not a big deal, but if even their strongest general was lost, it would be a huge loss. He coughed and asked the messenger seriously, "Is there any movement in Jiamen Pass?" The messenger shook his head and said, "We've been keeping an eye on it, but it's still peaceful." Meng Han said, "Go scout again. If the Lord sends a signal, we must support her immediately." The fire in the camp was so strong that it could be seen from afar. It was like a ball of orange paint that pushed back the thick ink. Jiamen Pass was on high ground, so it wouldn't take long for the enemy to notice the fire. The Lord inside the pass would see it too. Meng Han was sure that he would receive Jiang Pengji's signal soon. At that moment, the soldiers inside Jiamen Pass also noticed the strange burning clouds in the sky. However, they did not realize that Fu Wang had fallen into a trap. They thought that Fu Wang had led his troops to a great victory and burned down Jiang Pengji's camp. The soldiers guarding the pass noticed the abnormality in the distance and immediately passed the news to the generals who stayed behind. Because of the unequal distribution of military merits, Fu Wang could only bring the elites who were close to the Mengs this time. His own trusted subordinates had to be hidden for a while. However, he was not worried about leaving Jiamen Pass to his trusted subordinates who had fought with him for many years. Upon receiving the news that Jiang Pengji's camp was on fire, the confidant did not suspect anything. His thoughts were similar to those of the soldiers. He couldn't be blamed for being careless. Ever since Fu Wang entered the battlefield, he had never been defeated. Because Fu Wang was born to be brave and strong, other people always thought that he was a brute with only muscles and no brains when they saw his appearance. In fact, he was not. This person was cunning and paranoid. He had always viewed war as hunting and was very patient when waiting for his prey. As long as the opportunity was not ripe, no matter how noisy the outside world was, he would not make a single move. He was as steady as a statue. For example, when Fu Yang was seriously ill, the Mengs came to recruit him after the 7th day of Fu Yang's death. They even wanted to take over the troops that Fu Yang had left behind. The rumors were not groundless. Many people suspected that Fu Yang's death was related to the Mengs. Even though it had nothing to do with the Mengs, Fu Yang and the Mengs were sworn enemies. It was too much for the Mengs to recruit him after the 7th day of his death. At that time, his trusted subordinates thought that Fu Wang would explode and fight the Mengs to the death. But what happened in the end? In the end, Fu Wang calmly accepted the Mengs' offer. He protected the elites of Fu Yang's old troops and laid low to cultivate his forces. In order to achieve his goals, Fu Wang was too patient. This style and his high martial arts skills made Fu Wang quite popular on the battlefield. He had made great contributions to the Mengs and had never been defeated. Don't panic. Let's stabilize the situation in the pass first. Fu Wang's soldiers had a kind of blind trust in their general. They did not think that their general would be defeated. Send a team to the front line to check. Lu Shi is not a mediocre person like the Wulong County chief. He won't give up easily. Everyone believed that Fu Wang would win. But when they thought of Lu Shi's previous achievements, they felt a little uncertain. To be on the safe side, it was better to send someone to the front line to check. If the general did not bring enough troops, they could prepare for reinforcements. As they were talking, there was a commotion outside. It was so loud that everyone in the hall could hear it. Who's making noise outside? Hearing the commotion, Fu Wang's trusted subordinate raised his eyebrows and his face was full of anger. Wild wolves like to live in groups. Although they were not the strongest among the wild beasts, they lived in packs and had extraordinary combat strength. Their internal discipline was strict. Under the influence of the wild wolves, Fu Wang was unusually strict with his troops. He could be considered the most ruthless among the Meng's retainers. Under normal circumstances, no soldier would dare to blatantly violate military discipline. The noisy soldier was caught. He did not dare to delay and reported breathlessly, "Deputy General, there's a fire in the pass." A fire in the pass? The eyes of the trusted subordinate twitched, and a cold chill rose in his heart. What fire? He strode out and looked down from a high vantage point. Sure enough, there was a fire in Jiamen Pass. Who is the arsonist? The soldier answered, "We don't know yet. The fire was already burning when we found it." At that moment, another soldier came to report. The arsonist had been found. "Deputy General, the guards sent by Lu Shi are rebelling. They are heading toward Guanmen." What? Upon hearing this news, that person's heart skipped a beat, and a chill spread through his entire chest. He thought of a possibility and hurriedly said, "Could it be that those guards discovered that something had happened in Lu Shi's camp? That's why. Oh no, quickly send people to stop them." As soon as he gave the order, a dozen sharp bamboo whistles sounded in the sky above Jiamen Pass. Looking in the direction of the sound, one could vaguely make out a dozen whistling arrows. Now, the general who stayed behind to guard the pass gave up on his previous guess. What followed was an even more ominous feeling. The movement of the 100 guards was not a coincidence. They did not act after seeing the change in Lu Shi's camp. It was clearly premeditated. Thinking of this, he hurriedly ordered the soldiers to stop Jiang Pengji and the others from approaching Guanmen. Report. The messenger dragged his voice and rushed over on horseback. He did not even catch his breath when he got off his horse. He hurriedly cupped his hands and knelt on one knee. "Deputy General, a large number of enemies suddenly appeared outside the pass. The number is unknown." The general who stayed behind to guard the pass turned pale. He subconsciously looked at the orange burning cloud in the sky. This is Lu Shi's evil plan. Oh no, the general is in trouble. The sudden fire in the pass, the guards sent by Lu Shi rushed to the pass, and an unknown number of enemies appeared outside. It was clearly premeditated. If that was the case, it meant that Lu Shi had not fallen for the general's plan. Instead, it was the general who had fallen for it. Gather the troops and face the enemy. Chapter 794. For that night, not only did Fu Wang make ample preparations, but Zhang Pengji was also armed to the teeth. Meng Hun led his troops and brought a large number of siege weapons. He wanted to take down Jiamen Pass in the shortest time possible and end the battle as soon as possible. The enemy had the advantage of occupying the pass. Zhang Pengji had 30,000 soldiers, most of which were Lu Shi soldiers. Logically, there was no need for a clear division between father and daughter, but the two armies trained differently and the soldiers didn't have enough time to adapt to each other. Zhang Pengji knew that if she couldn't take down Jiamen Pass in a thunderous manner, it would be a Pyrrhic victory even if she could win when the enemy recovered and reorganized their forces. To her, it was a complete failure to achieve victory after losing a large number of troops. Wanzhou was a large territory with few soldiers. She had no other assets other than money. If she lost a large number of soldiers at Jiamen Pass, she would be in a difficult situation when she returned to Wanzhou. Li Yun watched his lord wander around the battlefield. He was tired, but at the same time, he had the urge to compete with her. The 100 or so guards were all elites of the army. Individually they were very strong. They skillfully formed a small formation of 100 men and advanced toward the gate of Jiamen Pass like a killing machine. They attracted the firepower of Meng Hun, who was outside, and he shared the burden for them. With the enemy attacking from within and without Fu Wang, the soldiers at Jiamen Pass were in a state of chaos and were routed like a mountain. Due to the narrow terrain of the nearby alleys, the enemy was unable to encircle and annihilate them on a large scale. This was very advantageous for Zhang Pengji and the rest. She and Li Yun's eyes were red from the killing. The weapons in their hands were already dyed red with fresh blood. Flesh and broken limbs filled their vision. Apart from the sounds of fighting, screams, clashing armors, footsteps, and the sound of weapons piercing flesh, there was almost no other sound. Although she wasn't strong, she was shockingly strong. She held her spear horizontally and single-handedly pushed more than a dozen people in front of her a few meters away. Li Yun attacked from behind. Li Yun used the whistling arrow as a signal to inform the enemy of their location. He also set fire to the place to cause trouble. However, more and more enemies were surging toward them, and the situation was getting worse. "My lord, there are too many enemies." Li Yun's armor already had a few cuts. Although he was not injured, he looked as if he had just floated in a sea of blood. He was in a sorry state. "I don't care. Charge." There were only about 100 of them. If they did not use their rising momentum to fight their way out, they would only be drowned by the waves of enemies. Zhang Pengji said calmly, "Han Mei, send 2 more people to cover me." In terms of combat power, Zhang Pengji could beat everyone by herself, but compared to her combat power, her defense was far weaker. In gaming terms, she was an all-round cloth-armored class that could engage in melee combat and long-range attacks. Her only weakness was that she was fragile. No matter how strong she was still a human. Her body of flesh and blood could not defend against swords, spears, swords and halberds. If it was her in the past, the situation would be different. A normal bullet hitting her would be equivalent to a mosquito bite. Li Yun did not hesitate and hurriedly picked 2 people to cooperate with Zhang Pengji's actions. Then, he knew his lord's true colors on the battlefield. She was like the god of death who had descended. From the beginning of the charge until now, a quarter of an hour had passed. The high-intensity battle made Li Yun feel tired. On the other hand, his lord's situation was completely different. Her previous actions were just a basic warm-up. As time passed, not only did she not feel tired, but she charged and killed more and more fiercely. The enemy's heavy armor for defense was as thin as a piece of paper in her eyes. She alone killed so many enemies that they were afraid and did not dare to advance. Hold the shields and form a formation. Zhang Pengji killed for a while. She seemed to have a premonition. She used violence to force the enemy back and retreated at the same time. She commanded loudly. The other guards hurriedly raised their shields and formed an iron tortoise formation. Their defense was impenetrable. The arrows that flew from afar hit the surface of the shields. "Advance. Crush them." While the audience in the streaming room was excited and the soldiers were confident because of her, Jiang Pengji was still so calm that it made people's hair stand on end. Everyone stepped on the corpses of their comrades and countless enemies to advance. The audience in the streaming room was used to Jiang Pengji's charging stance, but most of the time it was scenes of her fighting on horseback. It was rare to see her fighting on land, especially in such a violent way. Jiang Pengji fought on horseback. The audience's gaze followed her rapid movements. Most of their attention was also attracted by her figure. Their hearts were swayed by this young general dressed in red and silver armor. They rarely paid attention to the enemy soldiers who had fallen from their horses. When she relied on her legs and charged forward step by step, the audience's attention was involuntarily attracted by the enemy's corpses. Crush, advance, trample. The ground under her feet was not mud or bricks. Instead, it was corpses that were still steaming hot. At this moment, the audience was strongly aware of Jiang Pengji's other identity, the butcher. They continuously used whistling arrows to inform the outside. Meng Han organized the attack and tacitly concentrated the troops in that direction. They worked together from the inside and outside. It was not only to coordinate, but also to coordinate with each other to share the enemy's firepower and destroy their psychological defenses. Jiang Pengji was a technical expert. She also had Zhang Ping, a member of the Mahist family, by her side. Meng Han ordered his men to push up the arrow towers. Not only did they build ladders from the ground, but they also built ladders from the sky. The cloud of arrows and catapults were already in place. They fired several cannons at the top of the wall. Jiamen Pass was indeed a dangerous pass. It was easy to defend and difficult to attack. Even though Meng Han had made ample preparations and had the upper hand, once the troops inside the pass were united, he would not be able to gain much advantage. Even so, Meng Han had no way to retreat. He could only attack with all his might. If he could not break through Jiamen Pass tonight, he would have to atone for his sins with his death. Why? Didn't they see the whistling arrows flying above Jiamen Pass? Their lord was still in the city. If they failed to break through, Jiang Pengji would die sooner or later. Meng Han thought about it carefully. Their lord's death was caused by his incompetence. How could he live? Attack! In fact, when the troops inside the city realized that they had fallen into a trap and that their general was likely to be ambushed, their morale was already shaken. The general who stayed behind to guard the city had some reputation in the army, so he could barely keep the situation under control. However, Meng Han's attack was too fierce. Both sides had only attacked the city for one round, but the number of casualties kept rising. The huge pressure formed a thick cloud that shrouded every soldier's heart. To add fuel to the fire, there were fierce tigers outside the city and fierce wolves inside the city. Jiang Pengji's whistling arrows could not only inform Meng Han, but also put pressure on the enemy's psychological defenses. Chapter 795. Useless fools. Not even 100 men can stop them. The general who stayed behind to guard the place was burning with anxiety, and his rage almost overwhelmed his rationality. The battle outside the city was fierce, and it was night time. The longer the two sides fought, the greater the loss. In comparison, the mental pressure of the soldiers at Jiamen Pass was far greater than that of the troops outside the city. The stone cannons of the catapults were fired as soon as they were ready. Every time they hit the wall would shake violently. The soldiers on the wall had the illusion that the Jiamen Pass, which was usually impregnable, was about to be torn down by a violent demolition team. Of course, it was just an illusion. Jiamen Pass was known as one of the most dangerous passes in the world. It was not that easy to demolish it. However, the huge stones rained down from the sky like a meteor shower. Not only did they hit the wall, but they also smashed into the city. Because of the whistling arrow, Meng Han ordered the cannoneers to avoid that area. As for the other areas, smash them. Arrows rained down like a tide, stones filled the sky, and ladders were set up outside the city. Soldiers carried shields to block the stones and slowly climbed up. Under the cover of dozens of catapults, the soldiers on the wall did not have the energy to stop the enemies who were trying to climb up the wall. Deputy General, bad news. The enemy is closing in on the gate. Stop them. Are we going to watch them open the gate from the inside? The general felt like he was about to explode. His general had fallen into a trap, and his life was in danger. The enemy was pressuring him from both inside and outside the city, and he was almost out of breath. But he still had a bottom line. People could die, but Jiamen Pass could not be lost. Even with Zhang Pengji's help, they were still in a dangerous situation after losing the narrow terrain. There were enemies on all sides, and it would not be easy for them to break through. Even though Zhang Pengji could cut through the enemy's formation like a sharp knife, the advance of the troops was getting slower and slower, and the number of corpses of their comrades was increasing. There were too many enemies, and it was impossible to hold the line with only a few hundred people. If someone did not react in time due to exhaustion, they would be turned into a hornet's nest in the next second. Along the way, the corpses of the enemy and their comrades were strewn all over the road. The moment they fell, they were quickly trampled into meat paste. If it weren't for Meng Hun using the catapults to cover and share the firepower, there wouldn't be many of them left. Zhang Pengji's eyes widened with determination. Her breathing was no longer as steady as before. It was rapid and heavy, and her cheeks were covered with the enemy's blood. If one looked closely, they could see thick blood hanging from her eyelashes. The scarlet color was almost black, as if it was going to contaminate her inky eyes. Not only was Zhang Pengji in a sorry state, but Li Yun, who was engaged in a bloody battle at the side, also looked like a terrifying lunatic. Hold the shields. Shrink the formation. The number of troops decreased sharply. Zhang Pengji ordered the remaining troops to shrink the line of defense to reduce the pressure and prevent them from being overwhelmed by the enemy. The gate of Jiamen Pass was less than 300 feet away from them, but there were countless enemies between the two places. This was a great moat that they had to cross. The power of a catapult was quite terrifying. Not only could it shake the walls of Jiamen Pass, but it could also destroy the buildings in the city. A large number of soldiers had gathered in the city to surround and suppress the enemy. The boulders that were thrown out did not even need to be aimed. They would hit the target. Zhang Pengji and the others advanced another 100 feet. Her ferocious fighting ability terrified the enemy, and they almost lost their courage. They thought that the last part of the journey would be extremely fierce, but it turned out to be even easier than before. There were two main reasons for this. First, the range of the catapult was limited. Although it could be thrown into the city, it was not far. The closer Zhang Pengji and the others got to the gate of Jiamen Pass, the closer they were to the catapult's shooting range. Second, Zhang Pengji killed too many people. The more enemies she killed, the less the enemies in her way dared to fight her. Zhang Pengji led the remaining 30 people into the city. Li Yun was shocked to find that the city gate had been nailed shut with a thick wooden plank. Even though he was a good-tempered person, he could not help but curse. The viewers in the streaming room were even more furious. It was not easy for them to fight their way out of the city, only to see the city gate nailed shut. How did it feel? For example, a patient was seriously ill. He begged his parents to raise enough money for the operation before the disease worsened, only to find out that the operation fee was not 100,000, but 1,000,000. The impact of falling from heaven to hell was indescribable. Even though Li Yun was a man, he felt hopeless. His eyes could not help but redden. They were only separated by a few feet of thick city wall. Outside the city were their own people, but at such a close distance, they were separated by life and death. "My lord, the city gate has been nailed shut." Li Yun's voice was trembling. It was not a big deal if the generals died in battle, but if they dragged the lord down with them, they would be incompetent. Zhang Pengji glanced at the messy thick wooden plank on the city gate. Her expression became more ferocious and fierce. The viewers in the streaming room were in an uproar. Although they did not participate in the bloody battle, they were worried. They were so close to success, but they did not expect the enemy to play dirty. No wonder there were so many soldiers guarding the city gate. It turned out that they were messing with these things. Zhang Pengji said calmly, "Han Mei, go and command the defense. Try to hold on for a while longer." The city gate was narrow, so they only needed to defend against the enemy from one side. It was very advantageous for them. However, no matter how advantageous it was, they could not hold on for too long. Zhang Pengji bore the brunt of the energy consumption, but the other soldiers were also under a lot of pressure. She could operate like a machine for a long time without her condition deteriorating, but the others could not. "Yes, I will." Li Yun agreed. Even though he did not know what Zhang Pengji was going to do, his lord gave him a great sense of security. What was Zhang Pengji going to do? Tear down the city gate with her bare hands? At that moment, Meng Hun, who was outside the city gate, felt his heart palpitate. He had not heard his lord's warning arrow for a long time. It was either inconvenient, or, thinking of the latter possibility, Meng Hun hurriedly suppressed this terrifying thought. Impossible! My lord will definitely be blessed by the heavens. At that moment, Meng Hun was extremely regretful. Why did he not strongly dissuade and stop his lord when she was courting death? Jiamen Pass was indeed a dangerous pass. Even such a fierce attack could not take down the city wall. The more it was like this, the more anxious he became. The enemy soldiers inside the city were worried about their commander. Wasn't Meng Hun also worried about his lord outside the city? He could only order the attack to continue. His heart filled with apprehension and hope. It was at that moment that the general who stayed behind said fiercely, "They must be killed." He had ordered his men to temporarily seal the city gate. He was prepared to catch Jiang Pengji and the others like turtles in a jar. At that moment, there was a violent tremor under their feet, followed by the sound of the city gate being attacked. Are these people using siege weapons? If that was the case, it would be interesting. The enemy's allies were inside the city gate, so they could kill each other. Chapter 796. It wasn't a siege weapon? If it wasn't a siege weapon, why was there such a huge commotion? The general was stunned. Did Lu Shi's army have a siege weapon that was even more powerful than the catapults? Before he could recover from his shock, another crash came. Amidst the shouts and screams, the sound of the gate breaking was particularly clear. He was about to ask when he saw a messenger running up the wall. His expression was one of shock and horror. Bad news. Deputy General. The enemy broke the gate with their bare hands. The night was dark, but torches were lit inside the Jiamen Pass, so they could see clearly. Even though the surroundings were in chaos, they could still see the situation inside the city. That death god had actually smashed the city gate from the inside out, creating a crack in it. With the first impact, the thick wood sealing the gate broke, and the thick and heavy gate cracked, extending out like a spider web. With the second impact, the gate broke open. Not only were the guards inside the city shocked, but the soldiers outside the city were also stunned. Jiang Pengji quickly tore down the heavy gate. She gathered her qi in her dantian and shouted, "The gate is broken! Break through immediately!" She used a special technique to make her voice reach Meng Hun's ears. He recognized the owner of the voice and was so excited that he almost cried. He immediately led the troops to help Jiang Pengji. The gate of Jiamen Pass had been broken, and the scales of victory were completely tipped in their favor. With Meng Hun's troops, Jiang Pengji and the others escaped. The enemy troops inside the city were in chaos. The general who stayed behind almost fell when he heard the news. He couldn't help but feel dizzy. Jiamen Pass could not be defended any longer. Not long before the fall of Jiamen Pass, Feng Zhan and the others had also won a great victory. They had killed more than 2,000 enemy soldiers, severely injured or burned to death, and the remaining 2,000 soldiers had all become prisoners. More importantly, they had captured the enemy's commander, Fu Wang. Deputy Commander Jian, you captured the enemy's commander alive. This is a great achievement. Faced with this result, Feng Zhan was both surprised and pleasantly surprised. He praised Dian Yen profusely. He had been wondering if he could capture Fu Wang alive, but he didn't expect Dian Yen to actually do it. Yang Si also smiled and congratulated him. Then, he went back to what he had to do. After reorganizing the troops, he still had to support Jiamen Pass. Dian Yen, the one who had made the contribution, had a sour expression on his face. This detail made Feng Zhan suspicious. Vice Commandant Dian? Dian Yen snorted heavily and said, "An unfair advantage." Feng Zhan's smile faded slightly. He said, "The art of war is the art of deception. We have never paid attention to such pretentious, fake things." Hearing Feng Zhan's words, Dian Yen knew that the other party had misunderstood. He wasn't saying that the strategist's strategy was too sinister and that he had an unfair advantage. Dian Yen said, "That Fu Wang is very strange. If not, this general would not have been able to capture him alive." Although he said he was captured alive, his face was somewhat red. Obviously, Fu Wang had been affected by the smoke and had somehow fallen into the bonfire. Fortunately, Dian Yan's actions were quick, and Fu Wang's body was wrapped in heavy armor, so the fire did not really burn him. The battle had just subsided when Dian Yen saw the medics treating the wounded. He asked the military doctor to take a look at Fu Wang. What was the result? Fu Wang had consumed a lot of sleeping grass, so he was tired and his strength was probably not even half of his peak. That was why Dian Yen had taken advantage of him. Hearing Dian Yan's words, Feng Zhen smiled and said, "Good luck is also strength." Vice Commandant Dian, why are you so conflicted? After all, you were the one who captured Fu Wang alive, not someone else. You can't deny this credit. This Fu Wang is still very useful to my lord. Dian Yen initially wanted to cut off Fu Wang's head, but he considered the bigger picture and did not do it in the end. A commander was different from an ordinary general. If he could be captured alive, his value would be much higher than a dead man. Not only could Dian Yen not kill Fu Wang, he had to make sure he was well taken care of. Even if he was a captive, people were divided into different ranks. On the other side, the situation at Jiamen Pass was hopeless. All sorts of bad news had crushed the morale of the defending troops. More importantly, their commander might have met with misfortune. To them, the commander was their backbone. Once he died in battle, their morale would fall to rock bottom. Meng Hun and Li Yun led the troops into Jiamen Pass. As for the troublesome lord, please don't be reckless anymore. My little heart can't take this kind of stimulation. As they wished, Jiang Pengji did not show up during the final stages of the siege. The wounds on her body were only bandaged with a piece of cloth. Although she did not show up, she did not stop there. She led a group of people and rushed into the center of Jiamen Pass. Along the way, they occasionally encountered enemy soldiers who were fleeing in panic. If they resisted, they would be killed. If they surrendered, they would be tied up. Where did Huijun go? Jiamen Pass was in chaos that night. Huijun would be in a dangerous situation. If she was unlucky enough to meet those soldiers who did not care about their lives. Thinking of this, Jiang Pengji could not help but quicken her pace. She rushed directly to Fu Wang's former residence. Huijun was well versed in the ways of the world. She was calm and intelligent. She was not one of those reckless, naive girls. It was chaotic outside. If she did not find a place to hide and instead ran around, she would be in big trouble. No matter what kind of group it was, there would always be black sheep, especially in ancient times when the people were of low moral standards. With Huijuan's looks, if she was alone and accidentally met a villain, she would be in a dangerous situation. Huijun. The army had taken over the area, so Jiang Pengji could move around freely. After searching for a while, she finally found some traces of Fu Wang's sleeping quarters. Looking at the scattered hairpins and clothes on the ground, Jiang Pengji's face suddenly darkened. Her eyes were full of murderous intent. At that moment, she heard Huijuan's timid voice. "Is that Lang Jun?" Jiang Pengji followed the voice and finally found Huijun in a very secluded corner. "Who did this?" Jiang Pengji's voice was cold as if ice had been mixed in it. Huijun was wearing a loose linen undershirt that was not even properly buttoned. Her lips were slightly swollen, and there were tear stains at the corners of her eyes. The ambiguous marks on her neck and collarbone were particularly obvious. Even a blind man could see what she had been through. "Who did this?" Jiang Pengji asked again when Huijun did not answer. Only then did Huijun move her stiff and curled legs. She crawled out of her hiding place with a smile on her face. Did Lang Jun win? Jiang Pengji felt as if someone had stabbed her in the heart. She felt both helpless and heartbroken. You're really stupid. Jiang Pengji was good at deducing the truth from the smallest details. She could guess who had touched Huijun after thinking about it calmly. "Lang Jun, why are you saying this?" Huijun lowered her head. The hair on her forehead fell and covered a patch of shadow. She said, "I'm useless. After thinking about it, it seems that this is the only way I can help Lang Jun. Moreover, I did it willingly. It's not okay even if I did it willingly." She was a person, not a commodity. Huijun sighed. She said, "Lang Jun, to tell you the truth, I really don't feel wronged. Others don't say anything about my situation, but what would they think? I know very well. I can't marry anyone in this life, and it's even more impossible for me to be a concubine. But if I'm alone for the rest of my life, I feel that the days ahead are long and unbearable. If it's possible, I want to be willful for once and make my own decisions." She caressed her lower abdomen and looked at Jiang Pengji with her eyes shining. Chapter 797. If this is really your idea, I will respect your choice. Zhang Pengji sighed. She was not a person who liked to force things. Everyone had their own choices. Since Hui Jun had chosen this path, she could not arbitrarily ask her to change it. Hui Jun's gaze was gentle. She nodded at Zhang Pengji and thanked her. Thank you for your understanding, Lang Jun. To be honest, Hui Jun did not lie against her will this time. She really wanted to give birth to a child of her own. When she was young, she was ignorant and did not know what it meant to lose the ability to have children. But to this day, she still remembered the scene of her birth mother forcing her to be drugged. That crazy woman even tied her hands and feet and pressed down hard on her lower abdomen. The heart-wrenching pain that spread throughout her entire body still made her tremble uncontrollably when she recalled it in her dreams. After a few times, Hui Jun's body was completely ruined. It was impossible for her to have children again. That was the wound in Hui Jun's heart. It could not heal for a long time. She could only try her best to ignore its existence. She did not expect that she would miraculously get pregnant after so many years. If the child's father was not the late emperor of Dongqing, Hui Jun would have had the urge to give birth to the child. However, she could only laugh bitterly and use the child in her womb to get rid of the second prince's wife, Anyina. Since then, Hui Jun knew that her broken body had completely recovered. Her lost ability to have children had also returned. That meant that she could use a man to get pregnant and give birth to a child that was related to her by blood. Seeing that Hui Jun had made up her mind, Zhang Pengji could only support her. However, getting pregnant is not something else. How can you guarantee that you will get pregnant in one go? If it was in her era, she could directly go to a specialized institution for a minor surgery if she wanted to have a child. However, it was different in this era. The fertility method was still the most ancient and primitive. There was a certain probability that a woman could get pregnant after a man and a woman had intercourse. Hui Jun lowered her head and said in a voice as soft as a mosquito, I used the easy pregnancy pill that you gave me earlier. Easy pregnancy pill? Zhang Pengji furrowed her brows. She remembered that it had fallen into Lu Huan's hands. Why did Hui Jun have it too? She asked directly, didn't I ask you to pass the easy pregnancy pill to Lu Huan? Hui Jun explained, the easy pregnancy pill was indeed in Lu Huan's hands, but do you know what she did after getting it? What did you do? Hui Jun said, Lu Huan has always been on guard against me. Naturally, she would not easily consume the elixir. This person was naturally vicious. He actually ground some medicinal powder, mixed it in his food, and gave it to a woman who did odd jobs several times. In order to verify the miraculous effects of the pill, she even sent someone to secretly defile the woman. The woman did not have any children for 3 years after she married into her husband's family, but a month after that incident, the woman's pulse of pregnancy was diagnosed. To be able to make a woman who had not had any movement for 3 years pregnant in one go, the effect of this medicine was too shocking. Hui Jun thought of her own situation. For some strange reason, she secretly kept some medicinal powder for the elixir. After listening, Zhang Pengji understood what was going on. This thing can indeed allow a woman's body to enter the best state of pregnancy, greatly increasing the chances of conceiving. In other words, as long as her luck wasn't too bad, Hui Jun would soon become a mother. In order to reform Hui Jun's body, Zhang Pengji had used up all the cards in the system. This system card was completely different from the skill books sold by the system. The skill books sold by the system were made from the soul of the previous host, extracting the memories related to the skill from the soul. When the host used the skill books, they actually merged with this part of the soul and seamlessly received the memories contained in it. In essence, the system card was a condensation of pure energy. It was beneficial and harmless to the human body. It was a completely different concept from the skill books. However, she still had a question. Why did it have to be Fu Wang? Fu Wang's position was completely hostile to Zhang Pengji. She was pregnant with Fu Wang's child. Wasn't she afraid that Zhang Pengji would be disgusted? Faced with this question, Hui Jun hesitated for a while before revealing the truth. I have no intention of telling the child the truth about her father. Apart from her and Lang Jun, no one else would know about this. Zhang Pengji asked, You don't intend to let Fu Wang know? Hui Jun was stunned for a moment. She asked with uncertainty, Will the Lord let that person live? She thought that Fu Wang would definitely die. Zhang Pengji was speechless. She had an inexplicable impulse to sympathize with Fu Wang. No matter what, he is a valiant general. If we can recruit him, of course we won't kill him. If Fu Wang died in battle, it would be difficult to recruit his old subordinates. It might even be a ticking time bomb. No matter what, Fu Wang's value alive was far greater than his value dead. Therefore, it was Huijuan's turn to be stunned. What should she do if things went beyond her expectations? After a while, she looked down at her right hand caressing her abdomen. Her expression was particularly interesting. Then what should we do? Her face was pale, and her swollen lips had lost their color. If Fu Wang died, there would be no evidence. But if he was alive, it would be awkward. Don't be afraid. I'm here. Jiang Pengji comforted Huijun to prevent her from doing something stupid. Thank you, Lang Jun. Huijun felt relieved, and her eyes became moist. Silly girl. Jiang Pengji rubbed her long hair with a smile. Tidy up. It's still chaotic outside. Don't run around. Although they had conquered Jiamen Pass, it was still very dangerous outside. If Huijun ran around, she could easily get into trouble. Okay. Huijun nodded obediently. After settling her down, Jiang Pengji sent some people to guard the place to prevent the army from attacking. My lord, great news. Meng Han was overjoyed from afar. He said to Jiang Pengji, Deputy Commander Dian has captured Fu Wang alive. Jiang Pengji raised her eyebrows and searched for memories related to Fu Wang. Fu Wang was captured by Dian Yan? She asked coldly. Where is Fu Wang now? While Jiang Pengji was looking for Huijun, Feng Zhen and the others had already gathered their troops and rushed over. They didn't expect their lord to be so efficient. She didn't even give them a chance to help. Meng Han was so excited that he didn't notice Jiang Pengji's abnormality. He's been captured, but... Meng Han frowned and said doubtfully. But, the military doctor said that Fu Wang ate a lot of sleeping grass powder by mistake. He won't wake up until the next day. Jiang Pengji stopped in her tracks and asked in surprise. Fu Wang ate sleeping grass by mistake. Meng Han nodded and said with certainty. The doctor diagnosed him several times. He did eat sleeping grass by mistake. Meng Han was also confused. Fu Wang wasn't a careless person. He was very particular about his diet. It was impossible for him to eat sleeping grass by mistake. Could it be that the rumors had worked? Did the soldiers close to the Mengs drug him and plot against him? Chapter 798. After successfully breaking through Jiamen Pass, Jiang Pengji ordered the army to rest and reorganize within the pass and clean up the battlefield. She left the heavy tasks to Feng Zhen and Yang Si. She took a break and became a hands-off shopkeeper. Jiang Pengji's current condition was not suitable for dealing with worldly matters, so she could only rest for the time being. How did Lang Jun get so badly injured? Now that Huijun was serving Jiang Pengji, she naturally had the opportunity to see things that others could not see. When Jiang Pengji took off her battle robe and washed the blood off her body, Huijun was shocked to find that there were large bruises on her skin. There were a few open wounds on her waist, back, and arms. The shorter ones were only the length of a knuckle, while the longer ones were the length of an adult's palm. The wounds had stopped bleeding, but they still looked horrible. Huijun could not come back to her senses. Who injured you? Huijun asked quickly. When she realized that she had asked a stupid question, she secretly blamed herself. There were so many wounds. Naturally they were from the war. Huijun had mixed feelings when she thought about how Jiang Pengji had not treated her wounds immediately, but had instead searched for her. She was touched and bitter at the same time. She bit her lip and held back her emotions as she helped Jiang Pengji bandage her wounds. Injuries are common in war. It's good enough that I didn't die on the battlefield. How can I expect to be unscathed? Jiang Pengji said nonchalantly. She put on her inner garment with her gloves and fastened the thin belt on the side of her jacket. Her physical fitness was excellent. The wounds would heal perfectly in less than half a month without leaving a scar. As mentioned before, Jiang Pengji was strong in combat, but she was still made of flesh and blood. Knives, spears, swords, and halberds could still hurt her. However, she had deliberately dodged them, so the wounds were not deep and they were not fatal. As for the bruises on her body, they were caused by her being too impatient when she broke through the gate. She did not control her strength well, so she hurt herself. To be honest, Jiang Pengji could have been unscathed. But she was not fighting alone. She had companions and subordinates with her, and she had to protect them. 1 or 2 wounds could save their lives. It was worth it. These wounds will heal in half a month. Don't tell anyone else. Otherwise, Zishur and Jing Rong will worry for nothing. Jiang Pengji felt a headache coming on as she thought about the chaotic battle at Jiamen Pass. She had a premonition that after the counselors found out about this matter, they would definitely guard it to the death and not let her wander around blindly. Therefore, she decided that she would not go against the wind and commit crimes. She would be a little more obedient for now and wait for the wind to blow over. I'm just feeling heartache. Previously, Fu Wang had only left a shallow wound on Jiang Pengji's arm. This had been on Huijuan's mind for a long time. Now that there were large patches of bruises and wounds, how could she remain calm? Don't move, Lang Jun. I'll use some medicinal wine to dissolve the clotted blood. Jiang Pengji could only agree to her request. It couldn't be helped. Huijuan's reddened eyes were too pitiful. It was as if she would cry if she didn't agree. Lang Jun, your hand. Why is it so black? Huijun served Jiang Pengji the medicinal wine and noticed that her right hand was also covered in black blood. It didn't look like a blood clot, but more like a birthmark. But she clearly remembered that Lang Jun's right hand was a piece of white jade. When did he get such an ugly birthmark? Jiang Pengji followed her gaze and looked at her hand. She said calmly, "It's fine." The black blood mark on her hand was the level 9 loyalty talisman left by the time traveler. It was useless. Jiang Pengji kept it because she wanted to use it to seduce the time traveler. After treating the wound, Huijun still unconsciously pouted, her expression especially stubborn. After a night of chaos, Jiamen Pass had a new owner. When Fu Wang woke up from his deep sleep and saw the unfamiliar scenery, he tensed up and jumped up in a defensive posture. Ouch! He gasped in pain and moved his arm. Only then did he realize that the wound on his body had been treated. But his movement was too big, and the wound that had just stopped bleeding opened up again. Bright red blood seeped out. The people outside heard the noise and came in to check. Fu Wang's expression changed when he saw the clothes the person was wearing. You're awake. Are you feeling well? The doctor knew Fu Wang's identity, so he didn't dare to approach him. He only dared to wait at the door. Who are you? Fu Wang had already guessed the truth, but he still couldn't accept it. He had become someone else's prisoner. The doctor still didn't dare to approach him. He bowed and said, I'm a doctor sent by my lord to take care of the general's wounds. The general has many wounds, and it took a lot of effort to stop the bleeding. It's not a good time to be angry, and we can't make a big fuss, lest the wounds open up again. Fu Wang didn't listen to him. Your lord, Lu Shi? Looking at the surrounding scenery, it was obvious that they were at Jiamen Pass. How long had it been? Lu Shi had already broken through the pass? Fu Wang couldn't help but worry about his trusted aide who had stayed behind at Jiamen Pass. Yes. Fu Wang's expression changed again and again when he got the confirmation. After a while, he calmed down. The winner is the king, the loser is the bandit. A loss is a loss. Has your lord thought about how to deal with me? The doctor smiled. My lord didn't tell me anything. She just told me to take care of the general. The doctor thought that Fu Wang would kill him in a rage, so he was ready to run. Who would have thought that this man was exceptionally cooperative? The doctor immediately changed his dressing and re-bandaged his bleeding wound. Fu Wang's wounds were more serious than Jiang Pengji's. They were long and deep. When the military doctor changed his dressing and bandaged his wound, the onlookers thought it was painful, but this man did not even frown. Fu Wang thought that Jiang Pengji would leave him alone for a while, but she sent someone to summon him that afternoon. In order to prevent any possible accidents, Fu Wang was tied up like a human dumpling. General Fu, it's been a while. Jiang Pengji was still dressed like a man in the camp. She looked like a handsome young man. Fu Wang was confused about her gender, but he snorted coldly. If you want to kill me, just do it. General, you know I won't kill you. Jiang Pengji smiled and said bluntly, I've often heard Captain Meng talk about you. He said that you're the best general in the Mengs. Now that you've fought with me, you live up to your reputation. If you didn't have the upper hand, who would be the prisoner now? General Fu Wang, You're so talented, but you're willing to work for the Mengs. Isn't it a waste? Chapter 799. Faced with Fu Wang's straightforward question, Jiang Pengji did not show the expected awkwardness. Instead, she snorted contemptuously. General Fu, who gave you the illusion that I don't dare to do it? Jiang Pengji got up from her seat and walked to Fu Wang. They were less than 5 feet apart. From an outsider's point of view, this distance was rather dangerous because Fu Wang could explode and violently break free to assassinate Jiang Pengji. Even though others knew that their lord was good at fighting, they still felt worried for her at such a distance. Undoubtedly, Jiang Pengji's answer was beyond Fu Wang's expectation. He looked surprised. What was even more surprising was that Jiang Pengji helped him to free himself. Fu Wang could not help but waver. A fine bird chooses a good tree to nest in. So what if I have 3 masters? Jiang Pengji threw away the hemp rope in her hand and freed Fu Wang. The Mengs are just incompetent villains. They put you in an important position on the surface, but they are always on guard. Don't you feel wronged working for such villains? Outsiders say that the Mengs are very good to you. I think you know the details better than anyone else. Fu Wang snorted and did not take her provocative words to heart. Jiang Pengji's words hit his sore spot. He had been suffering under the Mengs, but it was not enough for him to give up the Mengs and go to a new master. They seemed to like each other, but they had reached a tacit understanding in secret. If he went to a new master, would Fu Wang get the same attention? It was easy to talk, but it was another thing to do. He had seen this kind of recruitment trick many times. I am a rough man who doesn't have much education. I don't know how to use flowery words. If you have something to say, just say it. You don't have to beat around the bush. Fu Wang did not fall for the common trick of stepping on the Mengs and flattering himself. To put it bluntly, the Mengs were trash, but the person in front of him was a fairy. No matter how bad the Mengs were, he had given Fu Wang benefits. Fu Wang did not expect the Mengs to treat him as a confidant anyway. In his opinion, if Jiang Pengji really wanted to recruit him, she should show him the truth instead of talking nonsense. In Fu Wang's eyes, whether it was to trample on the Mengs or to flatter himself, it was all self-promotion and self-flattery. Who didn't know how to brag and talk big? Who didn't know how to do that? Meng Zhan often talked about his ancestor, Meng Jing, who was a few generations away, to increase his value and popularity. Fu Wang was a stubborn person. Ordinary methods of recruitment were useless in front of him. Some people could be conquered with ideals and blueprints, because these people paid more attention to the satisfaction of the spiritual level, and words could move them more than money. However, there were some people who were completely realistic. Benefits were only good if they could get their hands on them. There was no use talking. Jiang Pengji rolled her eyes and changed her strategy. General Fu is a straightforward person. Since that's the case, I won't beat around the bush. Jiang Pengji smiled at Fu Wang and said, General, you are now my prisoner. Not only you, but also your trusted subordinates. If the Meng sends someone to ransom the prisoners, even if they can leave, you can't. There are only 2 options for you. One is to kill yourself, and I will tell the public that you are loyal and unyielding. You only want to be loyal to the Mengs, and you won't change your mind. The other option is for you to surrender, and everything will go on as usual. Fu Wang was silent at first. He didn't expect Jiang Pengji to be more straightforward than he expected. When he realized it, his expression became gloomy. Governor of Liuzhou, do you mean to die or surrender? Not only that, but she also used Fu Wang's trusted subordinates as a threat? Jiang Pengji smiled helplessly and said, Didn't you say to be more straightforward? Do you understand what I'm saying? Wasn't what she said quite straightforward? Not to mention Fu Wang, even a deaf person could understand. Fu Wang didn't say anything. His dark eyes flashed with a strange light, as if he was calculating something. Have you thought about what you want to choose? Jiang Pengji was clear that Fu Wang was willing to appear in front of her alive because he wanted to surrender. The reason why he was still stubborn was that he wanted to fight for some benefits for himself, such as protecting his trusted subordinates. Normally, almost no one would be at ease with a general who had just surrendered, let alone return the other party's military power to him. What if the general was pretending to surrender and suddenly stirring up trouble while the new lord was not on guard? In order to prevent the surrendered general and his former subordinates from taking advantage of the opportunity to create trouble, the original organization would be broken up. On the surface, it seemed like they were putting the other party in an important position and giving him a lot of trust, but in reality, they were transferring their own people to the other party's command. Even more straightforward, they would directly deprive the surrendered general of his military power. It seemed like they were protecting the other party's military power, and they looked like they valued and trusted him, but in essence they were promoting him. Fu Wang snorted coldly and was not prepared to express his stance. Zhang Pengji said, "I can subdue you once, so naturally, I can defeat you a second time. General, you have to think carefully." It was already humiliating to be captured once, but if he was defeated by the same person a second time, it would be a great humiliation. Moreover, Zhang Pengji's style was overbearing. She would not give Fu Wang a second chance. He could either pledge allegiance to her and work for her, or he could die. Was she going to let Fu Wang live to seek refuge with the enemy and cause trouble for her? Fu Wang seemed to be provoked. He said, "How can there be an invincible winner in this world? Magistrate Liu, aren't you being too full of yourself? What's more, the other party was too arrogant." Fu Wang thought he was arrogant enough until he came into contact with Zhang Pengji. Only then did he realize that there was always a higher mountain. "I advise you to think about it again, lest you regret it for the rest of your life." Zhang Pengji still refused to show her conditions, so the operation to recruit Fu Wang could only be put on hold. When Fu Wang was taken away to recuperate, Zhang Pengji's expression darkened. She muttered, "I really want to cut him with a knife. He's not pleasing to the eye no matter how I look at him." Meng Hun, who was beside her, said, "Why won't you say it directly?" The quality of the soldiers under Fu Wang was very good, but they were used to Fu Wang's leadership and had a tacit understanding with each other. If this group of soldiers was thrown to other generals to command, they might not even be able to exert half of their combat power. Zhang Pengji had decided to retain Fu Wang's military power from the beginning. This condition should be very attractive to Fu Wang, but why did his lord refuse to say it? "Drag it out and grind down his arrogance," Zhang Pengji said calmly, as if this was the truth. In reality, she simply didn't like Fu Wang. Meng Hun actually believed Zhang Pengji's reason and nodded in agreement. "That's good too. Fu Wang gets whatever he wants in the Mengs. He's usually quite arrogant. In order to win him over, the Mengs rarely say no." Meng Hun secretly shook his head. "Let's put him aside for now. Maybe it can grind down his arrogance." His lord was different from the Mengs. It was unlikely that she would agree to Fu Wang's request. To give a ready-made example, his lord had a good relationship with Feng Zhen, right? However, every time Feng Zhen asked for something from her, she always rebuked him. If Fu Wang didn't change this bad habit after he surrendered, he would sooner or later have a conflict with his lord. Chapter 800. Other than Meng Hun and the other generals who believed Zhang Pengji's words, the others exchanged meaningful glances. Even the newly joined Qi Kuang and Xiao Guang sensed something fishy, not to mention Yang Si and Feng Zhen. You'll get used to it. That's the Lord's temperament." Feng Zhen comforted the two newcomers with the attitude of an experienced person. Qi Kuang didn't like to talk because of his own reasons, but Xiao Guang was more open. "Won't the Lord anger Fu Wang by doing this? The Lord wants to win people over, not offend them. If things get ugly between the two sides, how will it end in the future?" Feng Zhen smiled calmly and said, "Zhen and Jingrong have analyzed Fu Wang in private. We all think that Fu Wang is different from ordinary people, and we can't judge him by the standards of ordinary people. Didn't Chong Ming realize that the other has never been upset about his failure, nor has he vented his anger on the Lord? What does this mean? It means that the previous failure was nothing to him. This person has long wanted to pledge allegiance to us, but the Lord refused to give him a ladder, so he couldn't get out of it. So he can only talk back. Once a general was beaten down from the clouds to the mud, no matter how good his mentality was, he wouldn't be unresponsive. Even if he didn't yell at them, he would at least give them a hateful look or an unapproachable attitude. What about Fu Wang? The other party calmly accepted his failure. His attitude towards Zhang Pengji, the culprit who caused his failure, was also indifferent. Feng Zhen seriously analyzed this point and came to a conclusion. Fu Wang doesn't care about who he's loyal to. He only cares about what benefits the person he's loyal to can bring him. This benefit doesn't necessarily have to be gold or jewelry. What does Fu Wang care about the most now? It should be his trusted subordinates. Just wait. He'll compromise sooner or later. In other words, as long as Jiang Pengji still had these people in her hands, Fu Wang would sooner or later surrender. Xiao Guang said, if that's the case, even if Fu Wang surrenders, it'll just be on the surface. He might be resentful. Feng Zhen said confidently, if it's someone else, they'll naturally be resentful, but if it's Fu Wang, don't worry. As mentioned before, Fu Wang was a very realistic person. As long as there were benefits, he wouldn't care about trifles. To a certain extent, a straightforward guy like Fu Wang was very difficult to deal with, but if he could find a way, he would also be easy to deal with. Xiao Guang frowned. If Fu Wang was such a person, wouldn't he have no loyalty to speak of? He couldn't help but be puzzled. Could such a person really be used? How could he be sure that he wouldn't go to the Fourth Lord? To put it bluntly, this person was an ingrate. How could he be trusted with an important position? Xiao Guang said what was on his mind. Will such a disloyal person really not harm the Lord? If there was a better target, this person would also jump ship without hesitation. Feng Zhen, on the other hand, did not care. He said, the Lord does not need his loyalty. The Lord only needs him not to betray her. These words were very contradictory, and Xiao Guang was momentarily confused. Feng Zhen then explained, I remember that the Lord once said that no one in this world would truly be loyal to another person. The only reason why they would be loyal is because the price offered by others for betrayal is not high enough. These words sounded a little harsh, but after thinking about it carefully, they made sense. The Lord only needs Fu Wang to work for her and be used by her. She doesn't need him to be loyal to her. Loyalty was never something that could be achieved with words. It depended on the person's actions. For Jiang Pengji, her standards were very low. As long as they worked for her and performed their duties, it didn't matter whether they were loyal or not. She couldn't force him to be loyal to her after having his body. A melon that was forcefully picked would not be sweet. Xiao Guang was speechless. This was the first time he had heard of such a theory. After spending 2 days cleaning up the battlefield and treating the injured, Jiang Pengji planned to return to Wanzhou. Jiamen Pass should be the biggest test the Meng set. Once we pass it, we will be safe. Not only had Jiang Pengji broken through Jiamen Pass with minimal losses, but she had also captured more than 10,000 soldiers and the Meng's top general. It could be said that the Mengs had suffered a great loss this time, while Jiang Pengji had won a lot from this gamble. Not to mention a capable general like Fu Wang. Just the elite troops that Fu Wang had trained for several years were an immeasurable wealth. Feng Zhen and the others heaved a long sigh of relief. They had been under so much pressure that they couldn't sleep well. Especially Feng Zhen. Although he had gotten rid of the Hanqi powder, his body was still damaged and he couldn't sleep well. When they returned to Wanzhou, he would definitely take a vacation. Of course, but the Mengs have been our enemy for a long time. Lanting can't be careless. Lu Shi had caught a cold a while ago and was seriously ill. He had only gotten better in the past 2 days. By the time he recovered, his daughter would have taken Jiamen Pass and wouldn't give him a chance to perform. Father, don't worry. I will be careful. As long as they entered the northern part of Dongqing, it would be the same as returning home. The Mengs would not be able to help. When Jiang Pengji led her troops through Jiamen Pass and marched north, the news of Jiamen Pass had spread throughout Dongqing. Fu Wang had a total of 25,000 soldiers, and they had the advantage of a dangerous pass. Without more than 50,000 soldiers and sufficient supplies, how could they break through the pass? Go home, wash up, and sleep. It's much faster to daydream. Jiang Pengji only had 30,000 soldiers, and most of them were Lu Shi's. They didn't have much supplies. But the result? She had only sacrificed 3,000 soldiers to break through the Jiamen Pass and capture Fu Wang and his 10,000 elite soldiers. What kind of impressive battle record was this? When the news spread to all the forces in Dongqing, everyone turned their attention to the Mengs. The Mengs were the biggest losers in the battle. They had lost both their generals and their soldiers. How furious Meng Zhan would be and how furious Prince Changsha would be. Just imagining it made them feel good. If they could see it with their own eyes, it would be a great show. It was 10 days after the battle at Jiamen Pass when Huang Song received the news. Lanting is really something. I can't believe the Mengs suffered such a great loss. I'm so happy. Huang Song smiled as he entered the government office, holding the bamboo slip that recorded the battle. My lord, what happened? Everyone was confused. They didn't know what had happened to Huang Song that made him so happy. Huang Song handed the bamboo slip to Feng Ju and said, Huaijie, you'll know when you read it. Lanting is going to be famous. Feng Ju opened the battle report. There were only a few numbers written on it. After reading it, Feng Ju handed the report to Cheng Jing and the others. Cheng Jing had a plan after reading it. Everyone's attention was attracted by the content. Cheng Jing remained calm because he saw something else. The chief of Wulong County in Haozhou is dead. His only bloodline and remnants are still in Lu Shi's hands. Haozhou was Huang Song's base and Wulong County was also his territory. Huang Song's smile disappeared. That's right. But I'm afraid Lanting won't be easy to deal with. We don't know what her attitude is. It's not right to go to her. They still didn't know what Jiang Pengji's attitude was. Did she want to use the remnants of Wulong County to intervene in Haozhou? Or did she want to let them run their own course? Chapter 801. A few thoughts flashed through Huang Song's mind. When he thought of the final plan, he could not help but tremble. Would Jiang Pengji give up on the juicy meat that was about to reach her mouth and push it into his mouth instead? Thinking of this, Huang Song calmed down a little. He shook his head and said regretfully, the descendants of Wulong were saved by Lanting. It is only right for them to inherit Wulong County. Official appointments in Dongqing were complicated. When the royal family was still powerful, most of the appointments and dismissals of officials had to be approved by the emperor. However, with the gradual weakening of the royal family and the loss of monarchical power, the system gradually changed from the emperor's bestowal to the heirs. After the rescue of the emperor, this phenomenon would become more and more common. What did it mean that Jiang Pengji had the descendants of Wulong County in her hands? It meant that the descendants in her hands were the first heirs of Wulong County. Huang Song was just an outsider who coveted the power. If the descendants of Wulong County received Jiang Pengji's help, they could rightfully become the chief of Wulong County. At that time, if Huang Song wanted to touch Wulong County again, he would have to face Jiang Pengji. If Huang Song was afraid of fighting, afraid of his opponent, and did not want to face Jiang Pengji so soon, he could only choose to endure and watch as Jiang Pengji extended her hand into his territory. But how could he allow someone else to sleep next to his bed? If Jiang Pengji really did that, she and Huang Song could only maintain a superficial harmony. Sooner or later, they would break up because of this. Cheng Jing also understood Huang Song's worries. However, he looked further ahead and thought about it even further. My lord, how do you know that Lu Shi has no intention of cooperating if we don't send people to probe? Cheng Jing calmed himself down and said to Huang Song, Lu Shi's greatest enemy has never been Dongqing. Her threat comes from the 3 tribes of the northern borderline. As long as the 3 tribes of the northern borderline are not destroyed, she will not be able to rest in peace. Even an eagle needs to use its full strength to catch a rabbit, much less the northern borderline. When Huang Song understood the meaning behind Cheng Jing's painting, he suddenly felt enlightened. Why was he so muddle-headed? The 3 tribes of the northern borderline were not easy enemies. In order to deal with them, Jiang Pengji naturally had to go all out. At such a critical juncture, how could she have the extra energy to meddle in the affairs of other forces? As for lending soldiers to the descendants of the Wulong County to help them fight for their inheritance, that was even more ridiculous. If Jiang Pengji didn't have the energy to meddle in Wulong County's affairs, what should they do with it? Thinking of this, Huang Song's heart beat wildly. He hurriedly asked, Yumo, are you implying that Lanting will give up Wulong County for the sake of the bigger picture? If that's the case, we can indeed send someone to negotiate with Lanting. I think she would be willing to cooperate. Cheng Jing nodded and said, My lord is right. That's exactly what I meant. Feng Ju agreed. Considering the current situation, even if the lord doesn't send anyone to look for Lu Shi, she'll send someone to look for us after a while. In Wulong County, there was no other suitable candidate other than the lord. If he could seize this opportunity to take down Wulong County, he would be one step closer to unifying the Haozhou province. However, in order to prevent any unforeseen events, I still need my lord to make a decision soon. Opportunities were fleeting. If Huang Song did not cherish it, who knew who would benefit from it? After some deliberation, the other strategists agreed with Cheng Jing and Feng Ju's decision. Huang Song thought about it and accepted the two suggestions. Just as Huang Song was overwhelmed with joy, a few people were so angry that they almost fainted. These people were none other than the emperor, Prince Changsho and his henchman, Meng Zhan. When he received news of Fu Wang's defeat and capture, Prince Changsho flew into a rage and killed several officials and generals to vent his anger. For a moment, everyone was in a state of panic and fear. Some people even compared Prince Changsho to the late emperor and came to the conclusion that the two of them were indeed biological brothers. They were the same as each other. In terms of brutality, they were practically the second emperor of Dongqing. Fortunately, none of these comments reached Prince Changsho's ears. Otherwise, he would have been even angrier. Because of his rage, he even changed his respectful attitude towards Meng Zhan. His attitude became a little more sarcastic. Mr. Meng strongly recommended Fu Wang to lead the army to battle in front of me. But what happened in the end? The so-called first general is just an undeserved title. He led tens of thousands of people to guard Jiamen Pass, but he still lost it. It's a great shame and humiliation to lose to a young girl. Prince Changsho said it was Fu Wang's fault, but what he really meant was that Meng Zhan set him up. When Meng Zhan praised Fu Wang to the skies, Prince Changsho had high hopes for him. He didn't expect Fu Wang to lose so easily. How was he going to attack Lu Shi and his daughter? He was sending them to their deaths. Meng Zhan's face darkened. He was already in a bad mood. Now that Prince Changsho was angry at him, his mood fell to the bottom. He also sneered, "Your Majesty, why are you so angry? Although Fu Wang lost, what did you lose?" The soldiers led by Fu Wang all belonged to the Mengs. They had nothing to do with Prince Changsho. Even if they lost, it was the Mengs' loss. Why was Prince Changsho so angry? Could it be that this man really regarded the Mengs as his lackey and the Mengs' power was Prince Changsho's? Prince Changsho almost died of anger after hearing Meng Zhan's question. But he was still rational. He didn't dare to fall out with Meng Zhan at this time. He put down his status as an emperor and comforted Meng Zhan. Although he was smiling apologetically, he felt an unprecedented hatred for Meng Zhan in his heart. These two men seemed to be on good terms, but they weren't on the same page. Elsewhere, the Su brothers also received the news of Jiang Pengji's great victory. But their reactions were completely different. Su Fei and Jiang Pengji did not have much of a relationship. When he received the news, he merely raised his eyebrows and analyzed the reason for her victory with his strategist. As for Su Bei, he and Jiang Pengji had called each other brothers during the alliance meeting. The two of them were still on good terms. Now that they had no conflict of interest and Jiang Pengji had won, Su Bei was naturally happy for her. But more importantly, to think that the Mengs would have such a day. How delightful! If not for his good upbringing, he would have pounded the table and laughed maniacally. The Mengs and Sus were secretly opposing each other. The conflict between the two had continued since the generation of their ancestors. The Sus were, of course, happy that the Mengs had suffered a great loss. They couldn't wait to throw a banquet and let the whole world know about it. Come, prepare a generous gift. Send someone to deliver it to Wanzhou. Tell them it's a gift from my sworn brother. Su Bei was rich and willful. Jiang Pengji had caused trouble for the Mengs, so he should at least express his gratitude. However, if this news reached the Mengs' ears, who knew how angry they would be? Apart from these few powers, the reactions of the other powers were varied. Some secretly sneered at Prince Changsho and the Mengs, but there were also those who were dismissive of Jiang Pengji. A woman was a woman after all. She had no backbone. It was just a small victory, and Lu Shi was so happy that he could fly to the heavens. Chapter 802. Lu Shi's influence was in Chongzhou. It was not convenient for him and Jiang Pengji to go there. Not long after they entered the north, Lu Shi parted ways with Jiang Pengji and brought his troops to Chongzhou. My lord, you don't have to worry about Old Master. In the north, apart from the Tsing-Yi army, there are no other forces that can threaten Old Master. Half a month had passed since the Battle of Jiamen Pass. During this time, Feng Zhen had eaten his fill and slept soundly. His days were comfortable. As a result, he had put on some weight recently. His skinny cheeks now looked a little meaty, and his complexion was rosy and healthy. Zhang Pengji said, "I'm not worried about my father." On the surface, Feng Zhen nodded, but he still insisted on his own opinion. His lord had been separated from his father for many years. It was not easy for them to spend some time together. Now that they were going to be separated again, she would definitely be reluctant. Zhang Pengji could tell that Feng Zhen didn't mean what he said. She couldn't be bothered to argue with him. The streaming room was lively as usual. Even if Zhang Pengji rarely interacted with them, they could still entertain themselves. Little chicken stewed mushroom. This war has been going on for a long time. I remember that the streamer had just left for the Alliance conference, right before Chinese New Year last year. Now that she's back, it's almost summer. Now that I think about it, it's been half a year. Time really flies. In another half a month, my baby will be preparing for the college entrance exam. I've come to the live broadcast room to make a wish, hoping that the host will bless me and I'll be invincible in the college entrance exam. Mushroom stewed little chicken. College entrance examination party. You're not thinking of fighting for 3 years to simulate 5 years of college entrance examination, yet you're still in the live stream room. You're so open-minded. Luo peanut candy. As someone who's been here before, I can tell you that this live stream is magical. You can always make your wishes come true here. Zhang Pengji had been on the road for the past 2 months. Every day, she was on the road, and the content of her live stream was the same. The audience found it fresh at first, but after a long time, they were tired of it. Many old viewers chose to lurk and peek. Most of the bullet screen comments were new viewers. No one knew who started it, but Zhang Pengji's streaming room became even more powerful than the koi fish. Everyone spread the rumor that wishing for good luck. The audience's bullet screen content was getting further and further away from the main topic of the live broadcast, until an old audience member sent a question. Moyen Song Yu Wan. I'm only worried about one thing right now. Has the news that the host is a woman reached Wanzhou? This bullet screen had caused quite a few people to lurk around. Everyone's nerves could not help but tighten. The streamer had taken care of the people around her, but her subordinates far away in Wanzhou were still in the dark. When they suddenly received the news that their lord had changed from a young man in the prime of his life to a young lady, wouldn't they explode? In fact, this pot had already exploded. When the news that Zhang Pengji had become the Wanzhou magistrate spread to Wanzhou, everyone also received another major piece of news. The lord was actually a wife. To them, the impact of this news was no less than the earthquake in Shangjing. All of Wanzhou was in an uproar. Everyone pinched their arms and grimaced in pain. Only after confirming that they could feel the pain did they know that they were not having a nightmare. Xueqi was so shocked that he miscalculated the accounts. Looking at the messy accounts, he could only endure the throbbing pain in his temples and make another one. How can the lord be a woman? From work to work, the same question lingered in his mind. Was he having a nightmare? Qiguan Rang went to Xueqi and asked him in private. You've been with the lord the longest. Don't you have any suspicions? When Qiguan Rang received the news, his attitude was still relatively calm. He had a faint thought in his heart, as expected. Faced with Qiguan Rang's questioning, Xueqi suddenly widened his eyes and said in an extremely aggrieved tone, How can I doubt it? How could a normal person suspect that the young man recognized by others was a young girl? Nowadays, cross-dressers were everywhere. The men of the aristocratic families wore flowery hairpins and powdered hair and wore red and green clothes. The chances of Xueqi recognizing them were even lower. Your madam didn't leak any information? Qiguan Rang was flabbergasted. It was fine if others didn't recognize her, but Xueqi, who was part of Zhang Pengji's first batch of subordinates, was still kept in the dark. It was really inexcusable, not to mention that Xueqi's wife was their lord's personal maid. Qiguan Rang's question stumped Xueqi. He was stunned for a moment. He carefully recalled what Sun Mei had said, and his expression became more and more interesting. He stammered, I vaguely mentioned it, but how could a normal person think in this direction? Qiguan Rang secretly rolled his eyes. Who could he blame? If they wanted to blame someone, they could only blame their lord for being too manly. They couldn't blame their subordinates for being blind. When Feng Jin received the news, he was in a good mood. How could he not be happy? He couldn't be too happy when he saw the dumbfounded expressions of his colleagues. For so many years, he had been guarding the secret that no one else knew. He had long been stifled. This happy mood lasted until he got off work and returned home. Wei Jingxian said, "What happened to make Huayu so happy?" Feng Jin took over Chongqing, who was getting heavier from Wei Jingxian's arms. He hugged his chubby daughter and didn't even care that his daughter was tugging at his cheek. "Jingxian, there are two pieces of great news," Feng Jin said with a smile. "First, Lanting has been appointed as the governor of Wanzhou. Second, she has regained her identity as a woman. From now on, we don't have to worry about her accidentally exposing her identity and causing unrest. How can I not be happy?" "Lanting?" Before Wei Jingxian could answer, the chubby daughter in her arms began to speak. She had only said 2 words when transparent saliva flowed from the corner of her mouth. "Don't be rude. Don't call her by her name." Feng Jin took the handkerchief from his wife and gently wiped away the saliva for Chongqing. "Lanting." Chongqing waited with her legs crossed. Her 2 black grape-like eyes sparkled as she babbled, "Why you?" Chongqing was stubborn. The more Feng Jin opposed something, the more she liked to go against it. "That's my lord." Feng Jin laughed and gave his daughter a slap on her butt. This girl was getting bolder. She even dared to call her father by his name. "My lord." Chongqing proudly learned. Her speech was still incoherent. Often, she could only say 2 words. "That's right. Don't be rude when you see my lord in the future." Wei Jingxian was overjoyed to see the father and daughter talking like chickens talking to ducks. Chongqing didn't know what she was laughing at, but she also giggled happily. The atmosphere of the family of 3 was very good. The other single dogs were a little pitiful. For example, Zhang Ping. As a skilled craftsman, he spent most of his time in the woodworking workshop. He was obsessed with craftsmanship and had no distractions. When he received the news, Zhang Ping's brain seemed to have rusted. He almost couldn't wrap his head around it. "Who did you say is a woman?" For the whole day, Zhang Ping seemed to be sleepwalking. He couldn't remember what he did at all. When he returned home, the first thing he did was to rush to his neighbor's house. He forgot to mention that his neighbor was Wei Ci. "Zixiao, my lord is actually a woman." Thinking that the person who went up and down the mountain with him, looking for wells, digging ditches and building reservoirs was actually a woman, he was completely dumbfounded. What was wrong with this world? Was he still having nightmares? He thought that Wei Ci's reaction would be violent. He didn't expect him to just raise his eyebrows lightly and say, "You know?" Zhang Ping was strangely silent. It was the season where spring and winter intersected. The weather changed rapidly. Wei Ci was naturally sick for a few days. During this period of illness, Wei Ci stayed at home and couldn't go anywhere. Logically, he shouldn't have received the news so early. In other words, Wei Ci had long known that Lu Shi was a woman. That was why his reaction was so calm. "You? When did you know?" A bold guess emerged in Zhang Ping's mind. Wei Ci said lightly, "I knew when Jishan's hot spring came." "So early?" Zhang Ping's face twitched. He gritted his teeth and said, "You clearly knew that my lord is a woman. You still introduced me to her. Were you sincere?" Wei Ci's expression changed. He started coughing hysterically. He looked like he didn't have long to live. After a while, this guy started pretending to be dead. Zhang Ping was speechless. Chapter 803. Zhang Ping gritted his teeth. Why did he have such a friend who cheated his teammates? If the audience in the live streaming room saw this, they would probably be able to perfectly translate Zhang Ping's current state of mind. Every time I get cheated, I see my colleague pretending to be dead. Wei Ci. With your acting skills, it's such a waste not to work in the entertainment industry. Zhang Ping looked at Wei Ci, who was pretending to be dead, and spoke in an unfriendly tone. "Wei Zixiao, you're still pretending? If you don't explain yourself today, I'll stay here and not leave." When dealing with a guy like Wei Ci, one must not be thin-skinned. One must be more shameless than him. He was thinking about how to get back at him when he saw Wei Ci lying motionless on the bed. His breathing was intermittent, and his chest rose and fell weakly. "Wait, this Did Zixiao's illness really act up? Realizing this, Zhang Ping's anger disappeared. He quickly went forward and pushed Wei Ci, using his fingers to check his breathing. Upon checking, he was exhaling more than he was inhaling. Zhang Ping's heart sank. Zixiao! Zhang Ping immediately broke out in a cold sweat. Just as he was about to call for the doctor, the sickly Wei Ci quietly turned his body sideways with his back facing Zhang Ping. He quietly pulled the brocade blanket covering his body towards his chin. How did he still look like he was about to die? Zhang Ping was speechless. The anger that had just subsided rose again. This kid was becoming more and more capable. He actually pretended to be sick in front of him and made him worry for nothing. Wei Zixiao, if you don't give me an explanation today, you and I will break off our friendship and never see each other again. Pretending to be sick? How could such a thing be faked? He did it on purpose this time. Who knew if it would be true next time? If the next time his illness really acted up and others thought he was acting, was this kid trying to get himself killed? Zhang Ping's tone was no longer calm. There was dignity in his anger. He was obviously serious. Wei Ci smiled. He knew he could not continue to tease Zhang Ping. It was a small matter if the other party was angry. If he really broke off their friendship, it would be a big deal. He sat up with difficulty. His face was pale as usual. His lips were an unhealthy greenish white. He looked sickly. I'm indeed sincere. Wei Ci shamelessly admitted it. He asked, will Shiheng blame me for saying this? Zhang Ping calmed down a little. He had nothing to say in response to Wei Ci's question. To be honest, Zhang Ping would definitely not blame Wei Ci. What's done can't be undone. What's the use of blaming you? Our Lord is not a kind person. Who can get off this ship smoothly? What's more, you already knew that she was a woman. After some consideration, you still chose to assist her. It can be seen that in your eyes, this lord is much better than ordinary feudal vassals. It's obvious that she's the wise ruler you've been searching for. I trust your eyes too. Zhang Ping and Wei Ci had known each other for many years. He was well aware of the latter's ambitions and aspirations. He was even more aware that Wei Ci's ideal ruler was too idealistic. He thought that Wei Ci would delay his official career until he was 30 years old. He did not expect that this guy would rush to the north in a hurry after receiving news of the earthquake in Shangjing. Out of worry for his friend, Zhang Ping escorted Wei Ci along the way. He was also puzzled along the way. What kind of person could make Wei Ci disregard his health and life and drag Chen Ke's sick body to seek refuge with them? When he saw Jiang Pengji, Zhang Ping did not feel much at first. It was only after several interactions that he realized that Wei Ci had found the right person. The wise ruler that Wei Ci was looking for was not only an ambitious and ruthless person who could run amok in a chaotic world, but also someone who had a benevolent and loving heart. Zhang Ping sighed. He lifted this matter up high and gently put it down, letting Wei Ci off the hook. If you had known about this a long time ago, you would have at least revealed some information to me. Then I wouldn't be in such a sorry state today. Zhang Ping thought of his absent-minded state today and felt gloomy again. You didn't say anything because you were waiting for this day. You're happy to see others startled, aren't you? The feeling of knowing that no one else knew and only he could not feel too good. I've really wronged Ci. I wanted to say it in the past, but the time was not right. I could only delay it again and again. Zhang Ping suddenly chuckled. If he believed one more word from Wei Ci, he would write his name backwards. Wei Ci had been sick for the past few days. He was not well informed about the outside world. Shiheng, you said that the Lord's secret has been spread to everyone. What's the attitude of the others? Other than Feng Jin, who was in the know, the others were kept in the dark. Hearing such explosive news for the first time, he didn't know if they could accept it. Zhang Ping thought about it and briefly described the reactions of the others. Most of them were surprised, and a few were frightened. As for the chaos that Wei Ci was worried about, there had been no signs of it so far. After listening, Wei Ci was relieved. Zhang Ping comforted him. Almost none of the people who serve the Lord are pedantic. Huayu, who has the strictest rules, reacted very calmly today. It seems that the Lord's gender cannot shake their loyalty. You don't have to worry about these people, but the people of Wanzhou. Jiang Pengji's subordinates were carefully selected. It was impossible for them to betray her just because she was a woman. However, it was hard to say for the ordinary people. They were the group that was most easily fooled by public opinion. They could be used as weapons if they were not careful. Wei Xi said, after the Lord left, all parts of Wanzhou were hurriedly selecting female soldiers to fill the women's camp. I even asked storytellers to write stories to promote the merits of the women's camp. After half a year, the people have already accepted it. When the Lord becomes a woman, they will at most cherish it for a while. Zhang Ping listened and nodded repeatedly. The atmosphere in Wanzhou was indeed more open-minded than in other places. Speaking of this, when will you finish writing the story? Zhang Ping frowned and could not help but urge him to update. Wei Xi's expression changed. His eyes drifted, and he said, "Isn't I still sick?" He knew Jiang Pengji's plan and knew when she planned to restore her identity as a daughter. In order to minimize the impact, Wei Xi had thought of many ways. Expanding the scale of the women's camp and selecting female soldiers in Wanzhou was one of the solutions. To be on the safe side, he also thought of another way, controlling public opinion with entertainment. Speaking of which, he had learned this method from Her Majesty. Compiling a story in the marketplace and having storytellers tell stories in tea houses and taverns, using catchy, easy-to-understand books to attract ordinary people. Through this method, he could achieve the effect of controlling public opinion. It was an era where entertainment was scarce. Only high-ranking officials and nobles had the right to enjoy singing and dancing activities. The entertainment life of the people was almost zero. Even activities such as performing on the streets had not become popular yet. Under such conditions, the power of Wei Xi's move was huge. It was comparable to a nuclear bomb. Every day, there were people who persevered in waiting, surrounding the tea houses and taverns so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. They eagerly waited for the content of the story to be serialized. Chapter 804. Zhang Ping sat next to Wei Xi and muttered, "I really don't understand why the people like the stories you write so much." Master Yuanjing's disciple was of such a high status, yet this fellow went to write stories from the streets. It was fine to write, but this fellow liked to whet people's appetites, squeezing out a little bit every day, making people's hearts itch. They wished they could lock Wei Xi in a small black room, give him a brush, ink, paper and inkstone, and urge him to fill the table with bamboo slips every day. If he did not fill up, he would not be given food. After all, it's for the people to hear. If it's too choppy, they won't understand at all. Rather than that, it's better to use plain words. It's impossible for the people to be interested in content they don't understand. Since it's written for them, it's natural to cater to their habits. It can barely be considered an appreciation for both refined and popular tastes. If the people can understand and listen, then it's considered a success. In the eyes of outsiders, Wei Xi's actions were not proper. In reality, the school of novels was also one of the 100 schools of thought, but it was criticized and looked down upon. There was a saying in an ancient book, "The school of novels originated from the officials. Street talk was created by hearsay." In other words, the school of novels recorded the people's street talk and reported it to the higher-ups, but it was seen as unfashionable. In his previous life, Wei Xi was also prejudiced against it, but Her Majesty strongly promoted the school of novels and even supported a few famous scholars of the school. Her Majesty's actions provoked opposition and criticism from the imperial censor, but she did not care. Instead, she personally wrote a few books and used facts to slap the imperial censor in the face. Wei Xi thought about it carefully and realized her deep meaning. The school of novels was not necessarily unfashionable. Nowadays, the atmosphere was still rather open-minded. Some things could be done earlier, so there would be less resistance in the future. Hence, Wei Xi wrote a few short and medium-length novels under the pen name Layman Xueqi. He had the plot and the content. The plot was full of ups and downs, continuous and broken chapters that made others want to strangle him. It was not the Zhang dynasty now, where novels were still scarce. They were few in number, and the content was difficult. Ordinary people could not understand them at all. After Wei Xi considered the content and 3 views of the novel, he diligently got to work. The first story was about a female ghost who was wronged when she was alive. She was pitied by the gods and returned to the world in 3 days to avenge herself. The main character was a female. The second chapter was about a talented scholar and a beautiful lady. The talented scholar was just a bystander while the beautiful lady was a strong man. The main character was a woman. The third chapter was an inspirational anti-Japanese war novel based on Duke Su of the previous dynasty. It mixed the character of the lord, and the protagonist was a woman. Then, the commoners unanimously believed that layman Xueqi was definitely a cute girl. Wei Ci. What was wrong? In short, under Wei Ci's promotion, a semi-official profession appeared in Wanzhou, a storyteller. Why was it a semi-official profession? This was because a storyteller could only have the right to tell stories in the taverns and tea-houses in Wanzhou if they had the permission and stamp of the prefecture government. Not only could they receive tips from the people every day, but they could also receive a fixed salary from the prefecture government. As for those storytellers without a stamp, although they could also find a stall to make a living, the content of their stories could not involve Wei Ci's novels. As for those with improper views, inciting the people and fooling the world, they were even more forbidden. If they were caught, they would be fined. Since Wei Ci wanted to use entertainment to control public opinion, he naturally had to try to regulate this industry. At first, many storytellers were not willing, but Wei Ci's novels were very popular with the people. Not only did the men like to listen to them, but even the idle women who knitted their sweaters liked them. Ordinary storytellers were not qualified to tell these novels in Wanzhou. In order to make a living, the storytellers simply took the open road of the prefecture government. Needless to say, this policy of the prefecture government was very useful. Not only did it provide the storytellers with the latest and most popular novels, but it also provided a fixed salary. The storytellers no longer had to worry about how their families would eat if they did not receive any tips one day. However, Wei Ci was a single person after all. Writing novels was limited to a hobby outside of work. He could not spend too much effort. After thinking about it, he looked for Cheng Cheng. A novelist? Cheng Cheng frowned. What do you want a novelist to write about? Wei Ci's literary talent was not low. Cheng Cheng really could not figure out why he was going through all this trouble. Wei Ci had no choice but to explain his plan. Ever since Cheng Cheng came to Wanzhou, he had been working hard on movable type printing and engraving printing. He also had to organize a large number of books that needed to be printed. He was very busy. To put it bluntly, Cheng Cheng could be considered an older otaku. He did not work and could not distinguish between the 5 grains of rice. He did not understand the deeper meaning behind Wei Ci's actions. Wei Ci had no choice but to tear this plan apart and explain it to Cheng Cheng in detail, hoping to get his support. As Wei Ci expected, Cheng Cheng did not agree at first and was even quite angry. In Cheng Cheng's opinion, writing books was a very serious matter. It was to educate the people and pass down a legacy for thousands of years. How could it be used for amusement? As for the novelist, Cheng Cheng also thought that it was a low-class profession. The paper produced was not used to record the history of civilization, but was instead used to torment these things. Cheng Cheng was so angry with Wei Ci that his beard was about to fly off. Cheng Cheng scolded Wei Ci harshly. When his anger subsided and Wei Ci explained in detail, Cheng Cheng's attitude slowly softened. Is this really as important as you say? Cheng Cheng's heart wavered slightly. Wei Ci sighed and said, Mr. Cheng, do you think ordinary people can understand the teachings of Confucius and Mencius? Even if you let the storyteller read it all day long, the people would not understand it. If they can't understand it, they will naturally not be interested. Only those that truly fit their current situation can be accepted by them. In my opinion, promoting vernacular books to ordinary people is not blasphemy. Mr. Cheng, please think carefully. Cheng Cheng's rationale was biased towards Wei Ci's words, but he still felt a little uncomfortable. As a last resort, Wei Ci could only take Cheng Cheng to a tea house. There happened to be a story being told there, and the people below were fascinated by it. Cheng Cheng looked at it and was silent for a while. Wei Ci said, Mr. Cheng talked to them about the teachings of Confucius and Mencius. Almost no one knows, but ask the people about the contents of the book. Even if they only heard it once, they could recite it as if it was their family's treasures. You can think that I'm being too unorthodox, but I still have to say this. Mr. Cheng wants to pass on your family's collection of books and spiritual treasures to future generations. But if the people can't understand it, it can only benefit a few people, and not all future generations. The school of novels is indeed not popular, but times have changed. Mr. Chung, why don't you watch from the sidelines and wait for a while? Chung felt a flash of inspiration in his mind, so fast that he almost couldn't catch it. Forget it. I'll find a few for you. Chung looked anxious and agreed to Wei Si's request. By the time everything was on the right track, it was already early summer. The provincial government received news that their lord was already at the border of Wanzhou and would be back in half a month. Along with this news, Wei Si also heard about the great victory at Jiamen Pass and the capture of Fu Wang. Wei Si raised his brush and paused. Ink dripped down, forming black dots. Chapter 805. What's wrong? You don't look too good. Is there something wrong with this Fu Wang? Xueqi rubbed his throbbing temples. Although his lord's transformation from a man to a woman did not cause a tsunami, there was still unrest in Wanzhou, especially among the landowning aristocrats of Shangyang County. The Feng family had maintained a state of silence, but the other aristocratic families were constantly making small moves. This was considered the best news in recent days. Xueqi wanted to share it with Wei Si, but he did not expect Wei Si's reaction to be a little strange. Xueqi was curious and asked casually. It was this question that pulled Wei Si into the quagmire of memories. Memories related to Fu Wang surfaced in his mind. I've heard of Fu Wang before. Wei Si adjusted his state of mind and restrained the shock in his heart, so as not to arouse Xueqi's further suspicion. Xueqi said, from the information we received, Fu Wang seems to be a valiant general working for the Meng family. I only hope that he's someone who knows his place. The lord was a woman, so it was inevitable that she would bring some trouble. At this time, the internal department had to be more united and harmonious, and there could not be any different voices. Recently, Xueqi and the others had been worrying about it. The situation in Fengyi County and Chengde County weren't too bad. The former was where Jiang Pengji had established her power, and her foundation was the most stable. The latter had been devastated by the Red Lotus Group and didn't have any troublesome local bullies. Among the 3 counties in Wanzhou, Shangyang County had the least control. In order to completely unify the forces in Wanzhou, they could only think of ways to suppress the aristocratic families of Shangyang County, either by roping them in, alienating them, or making them unable to unite. As long as these people couldn't gather together and unite as one, these clowns wouldn't be able to do anything. At this time, Xueqi was most worried about internal unity. Wei Si had given him a reassuring pill, which made Xueqi feel more at ease. He said, Fu Wang first served Fu Yang, and then he defected to the Meng family. In just a few years, he became the Meng family's most trusted general with his powerful martial strength. However, the Meng family was rather interesting. On one hand, they relied on Fu Wang, but on the other, they tried to rope him in and suppress him. It was quite a contradiction. With our lord's magnanimity, she will definitely be able to take him in. As for Fu Wang's temperament, there's a little problem, but it's not a big deal. Hearing Wei Si's words, Xueqi instantly felt much more at ease. As long as he wasn't a troublemaker who didn't fit in with the group, he wasn't worried. Xueqi then asked, what's wrong with this person? After all, they would be new colleagues in the future. It would be easier to get to know them in advance. Wei Si lowered his eyes slightly, his thick and long eyelashes casting 2 exquisite shadows. He smiled and said, Fu Wang's biggest problem is that he is fickle. Xueqi exclaimed in surprise. What did she mean by capricious? He thought that only women could be described as fickle. If it was applied to a man, then it meant that the man... Xueqi frowned. You're saying that this person is disloyal? If he was disloyal, how could this be considered a harmless fault? He had a good impression of Fu Wang and did not want him to be ostracized by Xueqi because of this. It can't be considered disloyal. Xiao Yu also knows that Fu Wang is a child raised by a pack of wolves. Wolves were far more straightforward than humans. They respected and supported the strong. This was an innate instinct. Once the master is weak and the subordinate is strong, he might not be convinced. Speaking of his previous life, Fu Wang's experience was quite interesting. It could be called a model of job hopping. Fu Wang was adopted by Fu Yang at first. He was Fu Yang's right-hand man and half his son. The father-son relationship was very deep. Later, Fu Yong died of old injuries. Fu Wang brought Fu Yang's old subordinates to seek refuge with the Mengs. They still lived well. The main point was that the master of the Mengs died of malaria. The heir was a good-for-nothing. He failed miserably and was finally abolished by Fu Wang. After Fu Wang took over the power of the Mengs, he accepted Prince Changshuo's recruitment and became his most trusted general. However, Prince Changshuo was also a good-for-nothing. He was a blind man. Logically speaking, Prince Changshuo's camp was full of talents. There was Qiguan Rang in the literary field and Fu Wang in the military field. Even if he could not become a powerful feudal lord, at least he would not die so tragically. However, this fellow had just gained a foothold and was arrogant. He was surrounded by a group of sycophants. Not only did he alienate Qiguan Rang, but he also threw him into prison. He was guarded against Fu Wang and even dreamed of taking away his military power. To his delight, Qiguan Rang ruthlessly killed his old master and opened the city to welcome Her Majesty. As for Fu Wang, this fellow had sharp senses. He predicted danger ahead of time and found an excuse to retreat with his troops. He sought refuge with the next family. Do you know who the next family is? The next family is the Su brothers from Zhe County. The younger brother, Su Fei. Did everyone think that this was the end of the job hopping? Of course not. Fu Wang first sought refuge with Su Fei. However, Su Fei was a funny man. Not only did he use his military power, his governance was also a mess. He caused the wilderness to stretch for thousands of miles and the people had no way to live. Even when Fu Wang joined with his troops, he was still unable to turn the tables on Su Bei. In the end he still lost. After Su Fei lost, Fu Wang accepted Su Bei's recruitment. Speaking of this, there was a small incident that had to be mentioned. Su Bei's strategist, Han Yu. Yes, he was Wei Si's senior apprentice brother in name and one of Master Yuanjing's outstanding disciples. Han Yu said, Fu Wang is a violent person with few responsibilities. He is arrogant and lacks loyalty. He is a capricious villain and cannot be used. If it wasn't for the fact that Su Bei lacked capable subordinates at that time, Fu Wang might have been killed. Because of this dispute, Fu Wang and Han Yu had a very bad relationship and had frequent conflicts. Later, when Su Bei was defeated by Her Majesty, he used some tricks to recruit them. Han Yu still cared about his old master and rarely gave advice to Her Majesty. Fu Wang, on the other hand, seemed to have been injected with chicken blood and had a second spring. At that time, many people were waiting for Fu Wang to jump ship again. In the end, Fu Wang led a team of tigers and wolves. As for Han Yu, he was cautious by nature and did things meticulously. If it weren't for that incident, he would probably have died of old age. What incident? Han Yu's wife was from a prominent aristocratic family. Her family background was extremely high. However, Her Majesty had affected the fundamental interests of the aristocratic family and had reduced their power over and over again. A few aristocratic families had secretly joined forces and wanted to overthrow the palace. After all their efforts failed, Han Yu was implicated and committed suicide to escape punishment. Fu Wang was ordered to confiscate the property of the traitor. Han Yu was also implicated. He felt humiliated and wrote a 10,000-word confession letter and committed suicide by swallowing gold. It had to be said that the dispute between Han Yu and Fu Wang had an inexplicable sense of déjà vu. Before Han Yu died, he secretly sent a letter to Wei Si. Every word was written with blood and tears. Wei Si had mixed feelings when he read it. After reading the whole letter, there was only one feeling. Han Yu died unjustly. When Han Yu was young, his family was involved in an unjust case. As a result, his family fell into disgrace. At the same time, his temperament changed drastically. After the establishment of the Jiang Kingdom, he was entrusted with the important task of revising the law. Chapter 806. This life was interesting. Not only did Han Yu's fate change, but he also avoided the tragedy of almost exterminating his family. Even Fu Wang entered the Lord's tent ahead of time. Wei Si searched through Fu Wang's memories in his mind. He only remembered that he was a strong, burly, and energetic martial artist. It would have been better if Wei Si hadn't mentioned it. Suka's brows furrowed tightly. According to what Zixiao said, Fu Wang is not a good person. I'm afraid he can't be put in an important position. Xueqi's influence on Fu Wang fell into the negatives. A person who could not guarantee his loyalty was a potential traitor. Wei Xi smiled and said, Xiaoyu's words are wrong. Not only will the Lord not let Fu Wang be idle, but she will put him in an important position. Xueqi couldn't help but say, but didn't Zixiao say that Fu Wang? He usually stayed silent, but once the Lord's power was weak, he would pounce and bite back. How could such an ingrate be used? Wei Xi's smile disappeared. His eyes were bright and full of confidence. He said, the Lord can subdue this wolf. Xiaoyu should be rest assured. Xueqi was speechless when he heard this. Wei Xi continued, don't be fooled by Fu Wang's rough personality. He is very meticulous and is best at capturing the emotions of others. If Xiaoyu has a grudge against him, he will know. He might not say it on the surface, but he might have a knot in his heart. He is a newly surrendered general and has only been with the Lord for a short time. He is not loyal. If he feels that he is being targeted, I'm afraid it will be more difficult to deal with him. Xueqi frowned. He understood Wei Xi's worries and could only say, I will take note of this. The new company still needed a period of probation to recruit people. In this era, Fu Wang was also a newcomer who needed to be observed. As an old man, Xueqi had the obligation to mediate internal conflicts. Even if they were not a family, at least they could not have unresolvable filth. Wei Xi knew the burden on Xueqi's shoulders. He patted him on the shoulder and comforted him. You will know when you meet him. Xueqi nodded. As the magistrate of Chongzhou, Lu Shi and Jiang Pengji did not take the same route to Wanzhou. The father and daughter separated halfway. When Jiang Pengji went to the alliance meeting, she only had a little more than 10,000. When she came back, she had nearly 20,000. The newly added soldiers were all elites. Yes, Fu Wang had surrendered. As for the details of his surrender, I won't go into too much detail. It can be summed up in a few sentences. What if a surrendered general doesn't surrender? Just a beating would do. What if a beating was still not enough? Beat him up again. Fu Wang boasted that his martial prowess was the best in the world, but he was captured by Jian Yan in his carelessness. When his injuries were more or less healed, he found out how he had knelt down. He had mistakenly ingested a large amount of sleeping grass. Fu Wang scratched his ears and cheeks, unable to figure out how he had mistakenly ingested sleeping grass to the point of making a mistake on the battlefield. Sleeping grass did not grow anywhere. Most of them grew in the Congzhou grasslands and were rarely seen in other places. In other words, the origin of the sleeping grass that Fu Wang ate was very suspicious. Adhering to the principle that even if he were to die, he had to die knowing the truth. Fu Wang went to find out the truth. However, the truth was too cruel. After he found out, he was dumbfounded. Heh, lust is like a knife above your head. Jiang Pengji mocked mercilessly. She used her body and spirit to attack Fu Wang. With this lesson, Fu Wang probably wouldn't dare to have any romantic affairs while marching in the army. In fact, if Fu Wang hadn't been too arrogant and believed that he would definitely win this round, he wouldn't have fallen for Huijuan's honey trap. Fu Wang felt that he needed some time alone. After a moment of silence, he asked Jiang Pengji, "What about the lady from that day?" Jiang Pengji snorted coldly. She felt that Fu Wang hadn't been tortured enough. He was still thinking about the beauty. "Why are you asking this?" Jiang Pengji glanced at Fu Wang coldly and nobly. It was one thing for this guy to pledge allegiance, but it was another for him to covet Huijun. In short, she wouldn't let Huijun continue to sacrifice herself. Her priority was to throw Fu Wang, the wolf, out of the sheep pen. Fu Wang said, "A day as husband and wife means 100 days of love." Jiang Pengji was speechless. Before she could react, the audience in the streaming room added fuel to the fire. The bullet screen was unusually meaningful. Mo Lingyin, "A day as husband and wife means 100 days of love." Is the day in this pervert's words a verb or a noun? Late obsessive-compulsive disorder. Whether it's a verb or a noun, this wolf wants to covet this lady. I can't tolerate it. Continue to beat him. Zhuyue Shunga. I absolutely can't tolerate it. Jiang Pengji took a deep breath. She looked at Fu Wang and called him by his surname and courtesy name. Fu Zhengtu, that's my personal maid. In the aristocratic families, Personal maids were mostly reserved concubines of their male masters. If there were no accidents, most of them would be taken in. Fu Wang was surprised for a moment. His expression became a little ugly. He immediately slapped his forehead and said, "My lord, you're not a woman?" If Zhang Pengji was a man, her words would be a warning to Fu Wang not to covet a woman who didn't belong to him. But his lord was a woman. Fu Wang was still very upright. Only men and women could have a future. Women and women had a pure relationship. Zhang Pengji retorted, "Can you beat me? Don't talk nonsense if you can't beat me." Fu Wang was speechless. If he still didn't understand, he wouldn't have lived until now. His lord was protecting Hui Jun. She didn't want him to have any further involvement with her. Fu Wang felt a tightness in his chest. There was an indescribable discomfort in his heart. He wanted nothing more than to vent his anger violently. What a coincidence. "My lord, please give me some pointers." Fu Wang issued a challenge to Zhang Pengji. Yang Si and Feng Zhan, who had rushed over after hearing the news, looked helpless. Compared to their helplessness, the other soldiers seemed to be on steroids. They surrounded a huge field and watched the fight. Fighting easily made one's adrenaline soar, not to mention that both parties were good at martial arts. Seeing that the fight between the two was getting more and more exciting, the situation was getting more and more intense, the surrounding soldiers lost their composure. One by one, they shouted and cheered. Fu Wang's old subordinates naturally supported their general, but Zhang Pengji also had a group of die-hard fans. When the fight between the two reached its climax, the cheers and cheers of the soldiers resounded through the sky. They were so noisy that even the guards outside the tent could hear them. The atmosphere was extremely lively. To outsiders, Fu Wang and his lord were evenly matched. It was very intense. As the person involved, Fu Wang had an unspeakable bitterness. He could feel that his opponent hadn't used her full strength at all. She looked tired and sweaty, but she looked like she was at ease. The feeling of punching with all her strength but hitting cotton was not a good one. Why didn't Zhang Pengji defeat Fu Wang? Instead, she was evenly matched with him. Firstly, Fu Wang's reputation among his old subordinates was too high. As long as Zhang Pengji fought to a draw with him, it would be enough to earn the favor of the surrendered soldiers. Secondly, by the same logic, if she easily won against Fu Wang, his old subordinates would definitely feel uncomfortable. They might even reject her. The current size was just right. She could publicize Zhang Pengji's reputation and make the surrendered soldiers accept her. At the same time, she could preserve Fu Wang's reputation. Fu Wang was carelessly punched twice in the face. There was blood at the corner of his mouth and his eyes were bruised. Hui Jun was embroidering children's shoes in a low-key manner in the tent. When she heard the thunderous cheers outside, she could not help but look around curiously. What happened outside? My lord and General Fu are fighting. They're fighting. Hui Jun rolled her eyes and asked, "I heard that General Fu is brave and good at fighting. Is my lord injured?" The person replied, "My lord suffered some minor injuries, but it's not a big deal." Chapter 807. Am I hurt? Hui Jun was in a trance. When she came back to her senses, she felt a sharp pain on her fingertips. She gasped in pain. Looking down, she saw a bright red bead of blood on her fingertips. "You're slightly hurt? Where are you hurt?" Hui Jun forced herself to calm down. She put the embroidery needle and the half-finished shoes into the basket and was about to get up. "I'm not hurt much. I was just scratched. Just stay here and don't run around." Zhang Pengji came over at that moment. Her face was flushed, and her cheeks and neck were covered with hot sweat. She looked like she had just been fished out of the water. When she came, the female soldier who passed the news blushed. She bowed and retreated reluctantly. Zhang Pengji was puzzled. Hui Jun was stopped by Zhang Pengji when she got up. She could only sit back down, but she did not stop talking. "I heard you fight with that brute Fu Wang just now, didn't you? Where are you hurt?" If not for her introverted nature, she really wanted to crawl over and examine Zhang Pengji carefully. Although Fu Wang was a boorish man, he was not weak in martial arts. He was tall and burly, like a small mountain. In comparison, her Lang Jun looked especially delicate and pretty. Two Lang Juns together were not as strong as Fu Wang. How could Hui Jun not be worried? The weather was getting hotter. Jiang Pengji had already impatiently rolled up her sleeves and trousers. She still felt uncomfortable. She took the wet handkerchief from Hui Jun and wiped the sweat on her cheeks, neck, and arms. Only then did she feel slightly better. Jiang Pengji smiled and said, "Don't listen to other people's hearsay. Where are you hurt?" Her smile was too pure. Even others could be infected by her smile. They would even smile knowingly. That purity was not like a blank piece of paper. To be precise, it was the clarity of seeing through the affairs of the world. "You're still denying it?" Hui Jun looked carefully. Her sharp eyes noticed that Jiang Pengji's wrist was redder and swollen than usual. There were some finger marks. It was only because the sun was strong and her skin was tan that it was not obvious. "Apply some medicine to reduce the swelling." Looking at Hui Jun, who turned to look for medicinal wine, Jiang Pengji did not know whether to laugh or cry, but she could only let her be. Jiang Pengji held her chin with one hand. While waiting, she glanced at the streaming room that she had ignored for a long time. Today's live broadcast room was still very lively. Jiang Pengji and Fu Wang fought with their bare fists. The audience expressed that the streaming that day was of high quality. It was a martial arts blockbuster no matter how it was edited. More importantly, they were watching from Jiang Pengji's point of view, so they had a sense of immersion. They faintly felt the thrill of transforming into a peerless master and beating up a child. What was even better was that after beating the little kid up, there was a gentle and virtuous lady by his side who was concerned about his well-being. The viewers in the live stream were extremely envious. Why didn't they have such a gentle and virtuous lady by their side? Not to mention someone as gentle as Hui Jun. Even if she only had 10% of her gentleness, it would be fine. Li Wushuang. The women around me can carry a 20-liter bucket of water and climb up and down. They are definitely tough women. Lao Ciji Lianming. I'm so envious of the streamer. I watch the live stream every day. As a man, I want to raise the lesbian flag. Xueqi Mo Nian Nian. I feel like gender doesn't matter in the live broadcast room. As a senior fujoshi, I really want to throw myself into the arms of romance. Drifting with the tide, little ding ding. Hee hee, whether it's romance or Yuri, my streamer can do it easily. Do you believe that? Love 36 stratagems. I believe, of course I believe. My streamer is the Lord. Do you understand that she's the main attacker? Jiang Pengji could not help but sigh silently as she watched the live stream move in a strange direction without looking back. Hui Jun helped her untie the cloth that was wrapped around her right hand. The ugly black mark was tightly attached to her palm and the back of her hand, like a birthmark. She sighed and said, "The palace's secret prescription doesn't work either. It's still the same." Every time Hui Jun saw the black mark on Jiang Pengji's right hand, she felt the urge to have goosebumps all over her body, but Lang Jun did not care at all. Jiang Pengji said, "This isn't a suntan. The whitening powder you used naturally won't work." The black mark was the level 9 loyalty talisman. As long as the mark was still there, it could always attract the woman from another dimension. Hui Jun sighed and carefully applied some medicinal wine to reduce swelling on Jiang Pengji's wrist. While applying the medicine, she said, "Lang Jun, don't bother with that boorish man. He's a rough and worthless rock. It won't hurt if he bumps into it." No matter how much a rock was thrown away, it would not hurt, but if a fine scratch was added to the unparalleled beauty of the world, it would be heartbreaking. Jiang Pengji agreed verbally and looked at Hui Jun's lower abdomen. She said, "The conditions during the match was simple and crude." Fortunately, she was obedient. Hui Jun's cheeks turned red. Her appetite had been very poor these few days. Everything she ate felt disgusting and nauseous. Lang Jun told her that she really had a child in her stomach. "How long has it been? How can you be sure?" Due to the rules of the women's camp, Jiang Pengji did not want to reveal that Hui Jun was pregnant, so she did not hire a doctor to take Hui Jun's pulse. Hui Jun wholeheartedly agreed with Jiang Pengji's decision. Regardless of whether Hui Jun was a soldier of the women's camp or not, in the eyes of outsiders, Hui Jun was a female soldier of the women's camp. The women's camp was already very secular, and it was difficult for them to walk. If there was news that a woman in the military camp was pregnant, how could her reputation be maintained? Since she could not hire a doctor, Hui Jun could not be sure whether she was pregnant or not until Jiang Pengji gave her a definite answer. Jiang Pengji did not know how to take pulses, but her mental brain was strong and she was especially sensitive to mental aura. There was another weak mental wave on Juejuan's body. This was a sign of a new life. In short, you still have to be careful. Don't tire yourself out on a daily basis. Although they did not rush on their journey, marching all day was tiring. For a pregnant woman who was still in her first month of pregnancy, it was enough to be fatal. Jiang Pengji could only let Huijun ride Little White. Even the saddle, reins, and stirrups on Little White's back were modified to make it as comfortable and light as possible. It looked a little gaudy. Fortunately, Little White's temperament was gentle. It did not make a fuss and was as obedient as ever. Huijun pursed her lips shyly. A gentle smile hung on her face, as if she was enveloped in a holy light. Jiang Pengji could not help but smile knowingly when she saw it. She sincerely hoped that this would be the starting point for Huejuan's brand new future. She would not be entangled in the quagmire of the past. There were still 10 days before the slight heat. Jiang Pengji finally returned to the base camp that she had not seen for half a year. Half a year had passed. Chengde County, which had been ravaged by the flames of war and destruction, slowly regained its vitality. Young people who had escaped the flames of war returned one after another. Because they had caught the tail end of the spring plowing, the faces of the people there finally had a healthy blush and relaxed smile. Fengyi County was full of vitality. The wasteland that had been cultivated was already filled with crops. It was full of vitality. Farmer men and women plowed the fields while children played and frolicked. Chengan District was a small district that had been tried out in the first year of the method of stationing the fields. Now, it had taken on a new look. Farming could be seen everywhere. Chapter 808. Wei Si's governance was indeed very good. The originally vague method of stationing land became a reality step by step under his arrangements. Based on the amount of land that had been reclaimed, if God gave them some face this autumn, not only would the food shortage in Wanzhou be completely solved, but there would also be enough surplus to support Jiang Pengji's army in 2 years of war. They would no longer have to scrimp on food and clothing, and the people would no longer have to starve to death. As for Shangyang County, one of the 3 counties in Wanzhou, there was now a new atmosphere. Xueqi and the others were also smart. While they restrained the local gentry in Shangyang County, they also thought of ways to win over the people and win their hearts. No matter how capable the gentry were, once they lost the power of public opinion, the right to speak, and the strength of their armed forces, they were just tigers without teeth. Feng Jin and the others fought back and forth with the local gentry in Shangyang County. Although they did not bleed or get hurt, they were tired and their heads hurt. What was gratifying was that Jiang Pengji had become the official magistrate of Wanzhou. Outsiders could no longer use unjustifiable as an excuse to attack her. So what if she was a woman? The Lord was still the Lord. She could fight anyone who disagreed with her. As for the victory at Jiamen Pass, the capture of the Meng's top general, Fu Wang, and his elite troops, that was just icing on the cake. Everything was going in a good direction. Jiang Pengji returned victorious. When they heard the news, the people watched the army enter the city with reverence, joy, and curiosity. Because Jiang Pengji was so close to the people, she often brought Zhang Ping and the others around, so the people were no strangers to her face. However, they still could not believe that such a handsome young man was a girl. So many beautiful women had their hearts set on her, but they did not expect her to be a girl. That was a big joke. On the day they entered the city, Jiang Pengji changed her clothes for the first time. She didn't wear a brown dress to deal with it. Instead, she wore a modified plain dress and combed her hair into a simple bun. Her thick black hair was like a black waterfall, parted in the middle, loosely covering her ears, and the rest of her hair was tied up in a bun at the back of her head. However, perhaps it was because of his attire, the once heroic young man looked a little more feminine now. The people were still stunned and rubbed their eyes, afraid that they were seeing things. They stared again and again, and they were sure that it was a woman. This time, the surrounding commoners were in an uproar as they discussed among themselves. Just as the soldier's jaw tightened and he put on a look as if he was facing a formidable enemy, fearing that the people would riot, a light pink handkerchief with a strong fragrance tied to a sachet flew into Jiang Pengji's arms. She caught it in front of everyone's eyes. Jiang Pengji held the sachet in surprise. She tied the handkerchief around her mouth into a beautiful and delicate bow. She did not need to open the sachet to know that it was filled with spices and not something to attack people. In other words, the owner of the sachet threw the sachet to express his love, and not because of the attack that the audience was worried about. Amused, she raised her head and looked in the direction the sachet came from. She met a pair of familiar eyes. Shangguan glanced at her shyly, then covered her face and moved away from the window on the second floor under the watchful eyes of the crowd. Jiang Pengji laughed involuntarily and muttered to herself, "This girl." Li Yun, who was about 20 feet away from Jiang Pengji, expressed his hurt and his heart was broken. He had expressed his feelings to Shangguan before he left for the war. Why was the one who received the sachet and confessed his feelings after returning from the war? "I feel wronged, I feel bitter, but I can't say it out loud." Li Yun's heart felt stifled. His handsome face drooped, like a rooster that had lost a fight. Shangguan's action was like a command. All kinds of sachets, handkerchiefs, and fresh flowers swarmed over from the crowd. Cheers resounded through the sky. Fresh flowers lined the streets, the people's hearts. Jiang Pengji asked people to carefully keep the sachets, handkerchiefs, and other items. Among the crowd, Wei Ci heaved a long sigh of relief. "Thank you, Lady Wan, for your help." Even though he had made many preparations, Wei Ci was still worried that the people would not be able to accept his lord's gender. For this day, he had secretly asked Shangguan to be his gunman. It was not right to say that she was his gunman. Even if Wei Ci did not look for Shangguan, she had planned to throw the sachet at him, but she did not intend to be so high profile. How can Master Wei be so sure that once someone takes the lead, the people will jump with joy and cooperate? Shangguan left quietly while the crowd was cheering. She happened to bump into Wei Ci, who was preparing to welcome Jiang Pengji. "The people have a good impression of our lord, but most of them follow blindly. If no one takes the lead, the others will only respond in silence." Wei Ci said calmly, "Lady Wan has set a precedent. The people who have long been prepared but dare not do anything will also be encouraged." He was afraid that one or two scumbags would sneak into the crowd, so he had asked the people guarding the city to be more vigilant. Fortunately, the result was good. The people knew how to repay kindness. The scenes that Wei Ci was worried about did not happen. He was relieved. Shangguan sighed with a smile. Master Wei has planned a lot for Lanting. Hearing that, Wei Ci's earlobes were tainted with a suspicious red color, but Shangguan did not notice. Even if she did, she would only think that it was because the weather was too hot. The king's worries and the minister's toil. The king's humiliation and the minister's death. As a minister, I should do my best and sacrifice my life for him. Wei Ci dealt with it calmly. Shangguan could not help but feel moved by his noble character, unquestionable integrity, and loyalty. With the fragrance of horseshoes, she took off her armor and returned in brocade clothes. Amidst the cheers of the crowd, Jiang Pengji rode the tall and mighty little white through the main street. The soldiers on both sides of the road straightened their backs. Regardless of her appearance, just her vigorous spirit revealed the demeanor of a mighty leader. The cheers of the people grew louder and louder. Jiang Pengji was very popular, but the other generals who had won the war were not left out. Among them, Li Yun was the most popular. Unfortunately, there were thousands of sachets, but the one he wanted was not among them. #my grievance #. Welcome, my lord. Everyone who could be there had arrived. Everyone had fully squeezed out their energy and physical strength. They had spared a few days just for this day. Jiang Pengji jumped off the horse and helped them up one by one. She said, "Thank you for your hard work." She did not spend much time fighting at the front lines. She was quite free when it came to making a fuss. Didn't you see that Feng Zhan had put on 2 sizes? In comparison, there were a lot of things to do in Wanzhou. The few people who stayed behind were the ones who were suffering. With her words, everyone's heart was at ease. It was as if they had poured a bucket of ice water during the hottest days of the year. Their whole bodies felt refreshed. After settling down the soldiers, Jiang Pengji could finally return to the district headquarters that she was familiar with. Honestly, even war was not so tiring. Therefore, whether it was money or this life, she did not like such a tiring scene. After entering the district headquarters, everyone sat on the left and right sides of the room. The atmosphere was a little awkward. It was because they were not used to it. Their lord had changed her gender when she went out. Thinking of their lord's previous style, they could not bear to look at it. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.